The presentation. We are live right now.
We're live. There we go.
All
There
right.
we go.
So, all politics are local. America's number one
Number
political
one.
radio show or streaming show. So, hey, welcome. This is another week. This is February 11th, the second weekend. We have a great lineup for the show. At 6 p.m., we already have our guest here. We have Jean-Pierre Brutas from the Institute for Social Justice. We're going to be having a real good talk for this first half hour about reparations and what that means in New Jersey and an actual bill that they're fighting to get passed. At 6:30, we're going to have Shavar Jeffries on talking about the Supreme Court. And, you know, we always like talking about civics. We have to have background, and he's going to give us a lot of great legal background on what's going on with the Supreme Court. Having a Black woman on the court doesn't really even matter, right? And I think that's going to be a lively discussion that we're going to have there. We have at 7 p.m., we have the vote. We have Reverend Conrad Tillard that'll be on there. And then we have, at 8 p.m., we have acclaimed civil rights activist, Nkechi Taifa.
She don't call herself no civil rights activist. You got to fix that.
Lawyer, civil rights lawyer. Right?
No.
Yeah.
Coming out the nationalist community, we don't use civil rights. We say human rights.
She's a human rights lawyer.
Child.
My bad. She is a human rights lawyer. Thank you for the correction. The acclaimed human rights lawyer, and I will correct that. Nkechi Taifa on reparations. So she will also be talking about reparations nationally and globally. This kind of a reparations kind of night. And of course, at 8:30, we're going to have DJ Rhino on talking about the state of hip hop. So welcome, Jean-Pierre Brutas. Thank you for coming on. And representing the Institute for Social Justice. You have a Say the Word campaign. Welcome, and what is Say the Word? What word should we be saying?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, good evening to all your listeners, and thank you so much for having me tonight on behalf of the Institute, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. As you said, my name is Jean-Pierre Brutas. I'm a senior counsel with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. And as you said, we're about saying the word, and that word is reparations.
Reparations is the word.
Yes, reparations is the word, and I think some of your listeners might be wondering, what do we mean by that? Why reparations of all places, the state of New Jersey, a northern state? Well, I think one of the things we need to consider is first, let's just talk about the present, and I want to urge your listeners to go to njisj.org/say the word. And there you can find some really incredible information about our campaign and about what we're trying to do. And I think there's some important information.
Hold on, now listen, Jean-Pierre, hold on. I want you to say that again. I want you to say it slower, because we're gonna put that up so folks can see that. Give us
no problem.
Yeah.
So I implore your listeners, everyone listening out there, and if you're at home, hopefully you're not driving, but go to njisj.org, right? .org/say the word, right? And there you're going to find out more about the Institute's campaign, but particularly about information that I just want to highlight for you right now. Just some stats about the current moment, right?
No. Are you going to give us stats? Because every time Ryan Haygood comes on and gives us stats, we all get sad. Like, you're going to tell us that white income is worth
29 times greater than black income.
Income is what's in your pocket right now. Is that what's going to happen?
Yes.
Unfortunately, it is. I just want to concretize the situation and then show why I'm highlighting this. So, we have some updated numbers, and it's still very troubling, and it's obviously a big problem, a major problem, these racial disparities. So, the median net worth of households in New Jersey is $322,500 for white families and $17,700 for black families. Right, that's a significant gap. That's $300,000 difference. And for individuals, the median net wealth is $103,500 for white individuals and $4,900 for black individuals.
Wait, hold up. You said, because every time you say it, it's kind of like, it's like we hear from the Institute for Social Justice, and then we look at our bank accounts and like, what? So you're saying the average for individuals, the average median wealth for white people, for white individuals, is $100,000.
No, well, in New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
In New Jersey, in the great state of New Jersey, the average median wealth for white people
I ain't never called New Jersey
is
no great state, but go ahead.
$100,000.
Yes,
$100,000.
$103,500. Yes.
Wow.
Right.
And for black people, it's like 4,000.
4,900. Right. And that could be, it could be as small as $179. It could be a little bit over that. Sometimes it could be negative wealth, right? It's particularly if you're in debt, right? If you have student loans, right? These are things that could be, putting your net wealth in the negative territory, negative area. But, I just want to point out, right? These disparities aren't, random. They aren't individualized. These are structural. These come about for a very particular reason, right? These came out of a particular kind of policy, right? And I don't want to gloss over that. And that has a particular history in New Jersey, right? And that was slavery.
Wait. So I'm looking at the thing on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it says wait, hold on. So you're saying the average median wealth of white residents is $106,000 versus 179. Wait.
And that's what Ryan gave us the last time he was with us.
Yeah, we have some updated numbers, but yes, that was great. That was accurate, several years ago. But that is, for some families, yes, and for some individuals, that is the case, right? And that is, like Brian has pointed out, less than the cost of a tablet, less than the cost of a laptop.
That's like sneaker money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like Jordans.
If you're crazy enough to spend that much kind of money on some damn sneakers,
you get some Jordans. You get some Jordans with that, right?
So, if you got a pair of Jordans, that's your pair of Jordans is like the net wealth.
That's it. That's your assets
in New Jersey. That's the median wealth of Black and Latino individuals in New Jersey. It may be in a pair of Jordans, a pair of old Air Force Ones, not really old ones, brand new ones, like stuff that you can get.
You get the padded leather joints. Yeah, exactly. Right. So it gives you a sense of the scale of the scope. And I think, why we're calling for the Reparations Task Force in New Jersey is because New Jersey has a very particular and clear history of slavery. New Jersey was once known as a slave state of the North, right? It was the last state in the North to abolish slavery.
Really?
Yes, right. And it was after the 13th Amendment had been ratified by the U.S. Congress, right? So New Jersey is late to the game. Through its founding, right, as a colony, New Jersey incentivized slavery, right? It built a racial system for dividing land. So for white people who came to New Jersey as settlers, they were given 150 acres of land, and then they were given additional 150 acres for each enslaved person that they had.
Wait, right? Hold on, stop. Wait, okay, so I'm not gonna front. I didn't know New Jersey was a slave state. I also knew it was the last one to, one of the last northern states to abolish slavery. But you just said that in New Jersey, they gave 150 acres of land to white individuals, but plus added an additional 150 acres for everybody who had slaves, for every slave they had?
For every enslaved person that they had, they were given each family was given an additional 150 acres, upwards of 150 acres of land. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And by 1830, all right, in the North, all right, of the enslaved population in the North, 2/3 of those people, of the enslaved population, lived in New Jersey. All right. I think, you're familiar with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850.
Hold on. Stop. Wait, can you back up that last fact? Did you just say that you said that 2/3 of what slave population was in New Jersey?
So of the northern the population of enslaved people in the North, right, in the northern states, 2/3 of those people lived in New Jersey. 2/3 of enslaved African Americans lived in New Jersey.
Wow. So New Jersey wasn't just a state that had slavery. It was like the slave state of the North.
It was a slave state of the North, but not so, as some historians have called it, it was a slave society, right? It was dependent upon slavery. It was a slave society, as the historian Graham Hodges has said in his book, Black New Jersey, right? It means it was dependent upon slavery for production of materials, for labor, right? For providing its economy, for organizing its politics, right? New Jersey was dependent upon slavery, right? It wasn't something anomalous. It wasn't a peculiar institution where it was an oddity, It was a fundamental part of New Jersey. Right? So I just want to hone in on that. Right? And this is why New Jersey supported the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Right? It was the only northern state to do so, meaning, right, it's slaves who had escaped the South, who came to the North, right, thinking that they were escaping slavery. If they were in New Jersey allowed people to return those slaves to people in the South. They supported that. That was that federal law, right? In 1831, the highest court in New Jersey said that the default status of Black people in New Jersey was to be enslaved, right? The automatic presumption was to understand Black people as slaves. This is before the famous, or I should say the infamous 1857 decision in Dred Scott, saying that Black people had no rights that a white person was bound to respect, right?
So just out of also, again, this history, right? You said that in New Jersey, what year was it that the New Jersey courts said that the standard state, like the go-to state of a Black person in New Jersey is a slave?
1821. Okay. And you can read this in Graham Hodge's Black New Jersey. Okay. And so this created, right, started creating the massive disparities. And also Black people, because of the slave codes in New Jersey that started in 1704, enslaved people were barred from owning land, right? They could not own land. And even some, the freed children of enslaved people during this period before, the 13th Amendment, could not own land. They were barred by the slave codes, right? So you had this situation where white settlers were incentivized and given land, and enslaved people and Black people were barred, right, from owning land, right? You have creating this sort of disparity right there, right at the beginning, right? And then you have, right, after the ending of slavery, I think for some people, in some people's minds, you have slavery, and then you have freedom, right? And with freedom, you have all these opportunities and things like that. But New Jersey and the federal government engaged in a concerted effort, like state-sanctioned effort, redlining, sharecropping, racially restrictive covenants, even some aspects of Jim Crow in New Jersey, right? Excluded them from the GI Bill, right? That limited, undermined, constricted the opportunities and abilities of Black people to thrive, right? This has occurred for a century after enslavement, right? It wasn't a period of freedom and then of slavery and then freedom. It was slavery, a brief period, Reconstruction, where there was a democratic moment, and then all these restrictive policies and practices in New Jersey that limited Black life, divested in Black communities, disempowered Black communities, while it empowered white communities, and it helped create this racial wealth gap, right? You have a series of investments and empowering on one end, and then disinvestments and disempowering on the other. And that's led to the current moment now, where we have these, as we said at the top, these massive racial disparities, right? And this is why we're calling for a reparations task force, right? This bill we've been pushing for this bill for 2 years. And I think in the current moment, what we're calling for is a task force. The task force would study the very things we spoke about, the history of slavery in New Jersey. It would talk about the afterlives of slavery in New Jersey, right? All those practices and policies that I talked about that undermine Black life. And then it would offer recommendations, right? Policies and programs that could empower Black populations in New Jersey, that could invest in Black populations in New Jersey, right? And that would be the purpose of the task force. But what we're calling on, and I want your listeners to do this, right? I'm calling on your listeners to act. I'm asking them to go to 400yearsnj.org. Right? I'll repeat that again. 400yearsnj.org. And what they can do there is they can tweet, they can email, and most importantly, they can call the Senate President, Nick Scutari, and the Assembly Speaker, Craig Coughlin, to post the Reparations Task Force bill for a hearing this month during Black History Month, right? We're just asking for the democratic process to go forward and for there to be a hearing on the task force bill, right? Let's have a hearing. The bill has been around for 2 years. Let's have a hearing on the bill in the committees and have an opportunity for the bill to go forward. I'm asking for your listeners, once again, to go to 400yearsnj.org and use the action tool. They can just fill in their information.
Got it up.
And it will automatically send it out to the Senate President and the Assembly Speaker and ask them to post the bill for a hearing this month during Black History Month. Let's use Black History Month, right? It's a great month, and I think this would be a perfect time to post the bill for a hearing. And let's have this conversation.
So also, the one thing I like about what the Institute for Social Justice does, like we're not just having a conversation about like reparations. That's a conversation that's leading nowhere, right? It really was like the whole purpose of even you being here is part of a campaign to get reparations studied, and then from study implementation, because we have to acknowledge that this is a serious problem that exists in terms of the wealth gap, the very serious wealth gap that exists with Black people in New Jersey. Now you can do it in the United States, you can do it in the world, but you are looking at just the state of New Jersey in terms of doing reparations. I also
now let me big picture this for a minute, because the question of reparations is an old question in terms of our struggle. It's gotten some fresh legs, and it's gotten some fresh legs from a range of places. This is a local expression of what's happening in many places around the country, right? This is a local expression of the whole question of trying to make HR 40 something real. HR 40 is the federal bill that had been championed for years by the great John Conyers, who passed away just a few years ago before there was motion on it. But just within the past year, Sheila Jackson Lee picked it up. There were congressional hearings on the bill, and the bill now has 196 sponsors, and it needs just about 218 to move through Congress. So there's been motion. There have been other local expressions. Evanston, Illinois is working on a local reparations package. The state of California has a commission that they have started, right? And several other, Kansas City is talking about trying to do, several other cities are trying to do that. But there is the beginning of people actually taking the question serious, right? And there is a national call to push for HR 40, right, during Black History Month. So again, this is a local expression, right? We'll have my sister Nkechi Taifa on from Nkobra a little while later in the show, and we will expand on that a little more. But I want folks to see the context of this. You know, I appreciate my young sons and daughters in the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice picking this up, but they're picking up something that goes all the way back to a freed slave named Belinda Royal, Belinda Sutton, who was a slave owned by the one of the wealthy New England families called the Royal family back in the 18th century, and she was the first to petition legally in American courts for the question of reparations. So this is an old struggle that's got a lot of expression in leadership by Black women, right? So I want folks to appreciate that as we appreciate this local piece. Go ahead, Jean-Pierre, pick up where you were.
Oh, no, I thank you so much for that. I appreciate that, for contextualizing and give us that history. Evanston has started distributing reparations just recently to about 16 participants. California has had 2 public hearings as part of the Reparations Task Force. The city of Detroit is going to launch the Reparations Task Force in the next few weeks. So as you said, there is this energy, there is this moment here that we can take advantage of to push forward reparations at the local level here in New Jersey, right, to get this Reparations Task Force bill passed and to post it for a hearing. And then also, as you alluded to, as you pointed out, at the federal level. I think we can get this done, and that's why I call on your listeners to, be part of this, to be involved, to take action, go to 400yearsnj.org, right, and be involved. Contact those 2 key legislators, ask them to post a bill for a hearing. Let's get this ball rolling. Let's get the movement going.
Now, in terms of the posting in terms of pushing for this bill is not a bill for reparations, but simply the study of reparations. Why it is a bill that mirrors what's going on in Congress. Zai just mentioned, what is that bill in Congress? What is the bill in New Jersey? Why have the study for reparations? Why is that a focus?
So I'll talk about the bill in New Jersey. So prior one of the key things, if you're going to come up with, I think, contours we need to think about is, if you're going to come up with a set of solutions, you've got to identify what the problem is, right? And having a study with some experts and having a conversation that's open and available to the public, we can begin to figure out what the problem is and how to address it. And so what the task force bill does is it would take 11 members, right? 3 appointed by the governor, 8 appointed by the legislature. At least 4 of those members would come from civil rights groups in New Jersey, and they would be involved in at least 6 public meetings in various cities across New Jersey that would invite testimony from the public, and it would be available for people to speak about their experiences with discrimination in New Jersey. And then it would provide recommendations, right? The reason why you have some expertise is because you could study the policies and the practices that are specific to New Jersey, and then to come up with solutions that are practical, that are within the realm of possibility within New Jersey, right? And it would also invite public comment, and it would involve experts from different areas, public policy, the economy, etc., who could think about, okay, how do we address these problems that originated during slavery and continue now, and what kind of solutions can we come up with? And having this kind of democratic process where it's in multiple cities, where the public is involved, we can begin to think about solutions. So rather than just go straight to reparations, we have this kind of conversation, this democratic dialogue, where we can begin to think about solutions, meaningful solutions, and practical ones.
Okay, you're saying that it's really about looking at practical solutions for problems of inequality. It's acknowledge that we have problems of inequality.
Practical solutions that address structural harm and undo structural harm, right? One of the 5 areas of reparation that has to be appreciated is the question of cessation.
Zai, can you break down what structural harm means? And both of you, for Jean-Pierre, Brutas, and
Jean-Pierre alluded to some of the things. It's not just what happened to our ancestors in slavery, but it's also the residual institutional racism that created conditions where you've got a ridiculous wealth gap like this, where you got a mass incarceration paradigm that has a prison population that is 60% to 65% Black, but a Black population that's only 12% Black, right? These are structural things that are set up to go this way. This country has to address its structural problems that create these racial inequalities, right? So the reparations is not just about, trying to alleviate conditions for a moment. It's about undoing the structures that created this long-standing running thread of history, even though we've gone through things like the so-called civil rights movement. We've had a civil rights movement, but yet we still have this persistence of this poverty, this persistence of injustice, this persistence of racism in practice. We're not talking about stuff that's theoretical. We're talking about stuff that's in practice that needs to be addressed, right? So this is why I always say to my young sons and daughters who are just getting in this very good, and I appreciate that. Reparations, the question of reparations as we know it, is the grandmother of what we now call restorative justice, right? So there's some basic things that we are trying to do on the social justice front in the name of restorative justice from a policy perspective that should be done as a matter of principle. Reparations actually should go further than that. They address the structural dimensions that set these harms up in the first place.
So thank you for that. And I just, to build off that, as the great Cyril Hall once said, the U.S. and other societies are societies structured in dominance. All right, the foundations of New Jersey. All right, there are cracks in the foundations that were exploited at earthquakes during the COVID pandemic. Right, these structural inequalities are present in the current moment. Right, they are here and manifest in health. Right, COVID-19, the virus, was a leading cause of death for Black people in New Jersey in the year 2020. Right, you see this in wealth inequality, income inequality. Right, you see this in the spatial segregation. Right, these are current things, and they have a long history that tie back to slavery. But part of what purpose of reparations is to address this, right? To have issues of repair and redress, and I think that would require things on this once on the symbolic end, like an apology, which New Jersey did in 2008, right? truth commissions, but also material policies that would address these structural inequalities that are systemic, right? They are throughout the society, right? Meaning they are in every single institution, right? You can see these various inequalities, right? You can see this in criminal justice. You can see this in access to the vote. You can see this in the economics and the political economy, right? In terms of people's ability to get jobs and people like valuation of the value of houses and home ownership, right? You can see this in student debt, right? And people's ability to engage in the economy, right? It's on down the line. It's built into this. It's built into the society, right? That's what part of what we mean by structural, right? And reparations and task force would study all these things, and it would engage in that aspect of restorative justice. This is in parts of the possibility of the Truth Commission to build on New Jersey's apology in 2008, to go beyond the symbolic and to go to the material, to go to the practices and policies and programs that would invest. And I just want to point out something. When the U.S. and states invest, and for the brief periods of time that it invested in Black communities, let's say Reconstruction, let's say the second Reconstruction, we call it Civil Rights Movement, those are the moments when the U.S. has been its most democratic. That's when it's opened up democracy to all people, right? So reparations, yes, will greatly benefit Black people, Black populations, African Americans, but will have a profound positive effect on the New Jersey as a whole and the country as a whole. So I want to also bear that in mind and keep that in mind for your listeners, right? The effects this will have on the U.S. actually achieving its ideal, becoming a multiracial democracy, right? So addressing these inequalities, addressing these foundational aspects of New Jersey's inequalities, these things that are throughout the society, we really have a fundamental positive effect.
So you're saying that ultimately this is about addressing the long-term structural inequalities, and by structural, both of you were real clear on these are things that have been ingrained. So it's kind of like based on where you were born, based on the color of your skin and that history, society is going to react on you a certain way based on the way it is structured. And you're like, reparations are to change that, the ways in which society is almost like programmed to act on you.
It's a program to act, but that's part of the task force. The task force will think about solutions, will address and come up with actual solutions to these problems. The task force will think about this, will study this, right? And then they will offer these things to the legislators, right? There'll be non-binding resolutions that the legislator can then take up. But that's why we need the task force, right? To study this, to have this conversation, to think about in actual policy form what this will look like, but also to do the work of reparations, having the repair, addressing the harm, and specifically talking about slavery, right? To go back to the origin, to go back to slavery, right? To say, part of saying the word reparations is to recognize the history of slavery in New Jersey, right? It's not just about addressing structural inequality, but to talk about the long history, talk about that link between slavery in the past and the current moment, right? It's not just, we need to talk about how these structural inequalities are manifest in the current moment, but how they are linked to the past.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for just breaking what the Institute for Social Justice is pushing us all to do, to say reparations, to call the Senate president and the Assembly president, to get them to act on this on Monday, or act on this during Black History Month. I think it's really important that it's more than just symbolic. One last question.
Well, wait a minute, hold on. Let me, because there's something I want him to address that I want this audience to appreciate.
We have 1 minute left, though, and we have our guest on in the background.
I know, but I want folks to get this because it's important. It's one of the important dimensions that New Jersey Institute for Social Justice did, is that when we talk about local expressions, one of the things that's beginning to happen with the question of reparations is that it's beginning for the first time to get multiracial support, right? And there is an interfaith, multiracial network that has grown up around the reparations push here in New Jersey that looks very different from what the reparations question looked like. The reparations questions, for the most part, for a long time, sat in the gardens of the African American nationalist community, right? Now that it's beginning to get legs, it is beginning to get legs in all those places where we needed to get legs for this to become what it needs to become. And so I wanted to acknowledge that they had did that groundbreaking work, and it's got us some multiracial support that we haven't had, and it's the place that we have to go.
So with that, like the I know we're transitioning to the other part of the program, and I think that's important to bring up. But so who is your? We ask this question of everyone who's on our show. This is the first time that you are on our show. We've had Ryan Higgins answer quite a few times. Who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Jean-Pierre, this is a hip hop talk show. You may not have been briefed on that the particular dimension of this, but so yeah, you got to answer that. Everybody gets that question.
It's the one and only Nasir Jones because of that singular album, Illmatic.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate having you on. It's funny because like I'm a teacher, a public school teacher. I've got a lot of students named Nas and Nasir, and I have a lot of students named Sanaa and various iterations of Sanaa. So I think a lot of the culture around that time, it starts to show up in schools at various times. So Nasir is probably is the second most popular name of students that I have. Right about
y'all need to check out his daddy.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right, son.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we are transitioning to the next part of our show where we are honored to have Shavar Jeffries on to talk about some legal issues that are going on. We always love having you on our show, Shavar Jeffries. Welcome back. We need to get you back more often.
Anytime, bro.
We always learn every time that you are on. Last week we had Linda Carter on talking about the Supreme Court, and Donna Williams always says we need to talk about more civics. We need to have more education, more civic engagement, and she really pushed us having conversations about the next Supreme Court justice. Biden said that he would have a Black woman, and they would nominate a Black woman for the Supreme Court, and so we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what that means to the court. Court's been very controversial. Would love to get your opinions on all of that. I'm going to start off with just whenever I hear like we're going to have a Black man on the Supreme Court or a Black woman on the Supreme Court or a Black woman vice president, right? I'm always like, doesn't it depend on which Black person? Because I get nothing from Clarence Thomas being on the court right now.
No,
I'm still triggered by it. So I need some help with this, right? I need some help because Clarence Thomas is like, oh, we're gonna have George Bush was like, we're gonna have a Black person on the Supreme Court, and I think Black people got way too excited, right? I don't think Clarence Thomas would have gotten confirmed unless he did have significant Black support. Like the NAACP relented when he was like high-tech lynching for uppity Negroes. Kind of caved. So help me out, man. Help me out.
Well, first, great to be here.
Go ahead, Shavar. Go ahead.
No, you want to jump in, brother?
No, I just want to say when Clarence Thomas's name came up, there actually was a split in the Black community over him. Everybody wasn't with that. So I just want
but too many were, right? Like it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. Oh, he got so much significant Black support, they were able to get away with it.
Yeah, it was disgusting. But go ahead, son. Come on, welcome aboard.
Well, first, always good to be with you, brothers, and happy to be with you anytime. Really enjoy the conversation. And so, to your point, for any position of political influence and authority, we want representation. And so the idea of the concept of having a Black person in position, of course, is about representation. But we all know just because you might have Black skin, that doesn't necessarily mean you're representing the interests, particularly the political interests of the Black community. I do think in terms of Clarence Thomas, some people may have been a bit confused about his body of work up to that point. He made arguments at that time about his alleged commitments to the Black community. We've seen his jurisprudence over the last 30 years has been beyond regressive. He's been more regressive on civil rights and on racial justice than most of the white conservative justices on the Supreme Court. So I don't even have a lens, that's not an ad hominem one, which I try to avoid to really process that. So the bottom line is we definitely want representation on the Supreme Court. We're long past the time. We should, at this point, if there was true equity, we'd have had multiple Black women, multiple brothers, multiple Latinos and Latinas on the court. We've never had one, so we want one. But to the point, it has to be someone who's gonna bring an understanding of the issues that we face in our community and bring that lens to bear on their decision making within the court. Frankly, we need any justice who's appointed to bring that lens, even the white justices, particularly when we have presidents whose election depends upon the Black community making decisions. We want all of them to have that lens, but one would expect if it's most Black people, because I do think most of us are very rooted in our community and want to see our community continue to advance, they should bring a lens that's enriched by that experience, and frankly is going to view a critical part of justice as expanding racial equity and racial opportunity.
Wow. So when we're talking about the people who are up for selection right now, what do you think about the names that have been mentioned? What do you think about what, and more importantly, and to your point, what do you think they need to stand for? Especially given that it might not even matter. Like, it's 6'3", it's still going to be 6'3". Like, it may not make a difference in our lifetimes. It might not. 30 years down the line, we might be old people before this one makes a difference. You know, so I guess I threw two questions in there. Like, one, should we care? And two, if we should, like, will it make a difference? At 6'3", they may be overturning Roe v. Wade. They may be overturning affirmative action. They may be like, it's a good old day. Like, you know, the Trumpers, they got their thing. They won that. Is it over? And if it's not over, why does this matter?
It's definitely not over. You know, we definitely know as Black folk, we're running a marathon. That marathon will continue, likely for as long as we're here. And there's been ebbs and flows. And obviously, President Obama was a flow. And then, which is frankly, we know our history is very consistent. When we make some progress, there's a progression. And so it wasn't surprising to see Trump. And so it absolutely matters. And I would urge President Biden to appoint somebody who's 50 years age of or less. So we can hopefully have somebody who'll be on the court for 20 to 25 years. We have to play a medium and long game. In the short term, we're going to have some difficulties. It looks like affirmative action may be going down. The Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act, particularly the pre-clearance portions of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which meant that jurisdictions with a prior history of racial discrimination, which is basically the entire South and multiple jurisdictions in the Midwest and North. We know everybody actually has a prior history, but the way the jurisprudence is set up, it was only certain parts of the country, but the Supreme Court has gutted that. So those
we're going to ask you to circle
aren't in place anymore.
We're going to ask you to circle back to that. Like, finish your thoughts, but we definitely want to ask you to circle back to when you're talking about the jurisprudence of the Civil Rights Act, because we want to just break that down. But
okay.
Continue.
Yeah, so we have, there's going to be big voting rights issues. There's going to be a ton of civil rights issues, whether affirmative action, discrimination in employment, discrimination in contracting. There's going to be fair wage issues that are likely to come to the Supreme Court, individual rights issues. Can I
stop you? Can I stop you again?
Yes,
just a little bit.
Please.
All right, so you started going down a list of where we're screwed, right? Like this has been you were going to, like, hey, affirmative action, Roe v. Wade. Then you started talking about voting rights, and now you're talking about labor, and you're like, here's where we're screwed. Here's where we're screwed. Here's where we're screwed. Here's where we're screwed. It was a list, and I had to be like, let's go back to voting rights, because we just want to break down in terms of jurisprudence. But I'm just stopping you just for a second, just to let our listeners. Yes, he's talking about all the ways when we are screwed in the near future, in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Next 2 to 3 years, you're talking about cases that are coming up in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I really compare some of what we're dealing with now is similar to the post-Reconstruction period, where, 1865 to 1877, when you had the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, there was a significant amount of advancement from the slavery era. And then, of course, that was foreclosed once Reconstruction ended. And there's what they call the redemption period, where white folks felt the need to redeem themselves and to push us back into a place they viewed as more marginalized. And so we're seeing a kind of contemporary version of that. So in terms of voting rights, yes, the Voting Rights Act generally required, if I try to simplify as much as possible, states to not engage in activity that would diminish the political influence of Black and brown communities, Anytime there were changes to voting rights practices, whether how it is you can register to vote or when polls were open, where polling locations were located, that would have to be pre-cleared by the federal courts. That has basically been gutted. And so we've seen post 2020, with Trump talking about all of this alleged voter fraud, we've seen states remove polling places from Black and brown communities, cut back on early voting, cut back on voting hours, enable state election officials to overturn local election counts based upon, frankly, a flimsy evidence. And so, yeah, we're going to have some challenges. There's no question in the short term. But on the other hand, we've been here before as a people. We've made it through worse than this. We'll make it through whatever they want to bring, and which is why we need a Supreme Court justice who reflects our interests and who's young. So hopefully, if they can maintain their health, they can be there for a while. So hopefully, in the next decade or so, we can begin to turn that around. But the bottom line is, from my perspective, we better look at the courts shouldn't be viewed as a place where we should put too much of our capital in terms of bringing about racial justice. So institution building within our community, doing business with one another, building our own institutions, working with those allies who claim that they support of our agenda. But the courts, the federal courts at least, are going to be challenging for the next probably decade, to be frank.
So what you're saying is we need to bring this back to like the 1880s and 1890s and like pre-civil rights, pre-integration. We need to bring it way back historically to post-Civil War, pre-civil rights. That's where we are right now.
It tactically, and to be very clear, I'm not suggesting that our conditions are what they were then, right? Our conditions, as challenging as they are dramatically better, in my judgment, than they were at the late 19th century. However, if you think about the conversation people like W.B. Du Bois had and Booker T. Washington had in the midst of that, I think conversations around political empowerment, conversations around economic empowerment, conversations around institution building, conversation of working with allies to invest in our community is probably where we're going to get more bang for our buck in terms of moving this racial equity needle than going to federal courts and filing a whole bunch of lawsuits.
Mm-hmm. All right, and it's interesting in terms of the way you're bringing that up, right? Like you're like, right now, it's really about movements. It's about organization. It really isn't about finding any type of relief from courts, because that's probably not where we're going to find relief. If we can't do it through organization, it probably won't be done. On Roe v. Wade, right? Mm. One of the conversations that strikes me, right, is that for years we've been seeing rollbacks in red states on the right to choose, to the extent to which there are some states with one open abortion clinic, right? And we're talking about before this current wave of laws, it was so hard to get abortions in certain states, it was darn near impossible, right? Has Roe v. Wade effectively already been overturned?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's definitely the case that the pro-life community for 49 years now, since Roe v. Wade, have been engaged in a variety of different tactics to undercut the right to choose. So there's no question about that. And you're absolutely true. In certain parts of the South, it is extremely difficult to find an abortion clinic, which means that people have to go across state lines or travel very far. And we know for low-income communities, that's very, very difficult. Nonetheless, in large parts of the country, abortion clinics are open, much more substantially. As challenging as it is, if you're determined, you can find your way, frankly, to an abortion clinic. So it's definitely been narrowed dramatically. And it's definitely been narrowed in ways that are inconsistent with the court's ruling in Roe. But I wouldn't go so far to say it's been effectively overruled at this point.
And the reason why, the question came up is, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, what changes on a day-to-day life in states? Like in red states, still really, really hard to do, right? Because states could already pass laws that would intensely restrict. And states that allow abort, like New York, New Jersey, you're still going to be able to get an abortion, because is Roe v. Wade, right? Does Roe v. Wade outlaw abortion nationally, or is it just states just make the rules pretty much in a similar way to the way they make them now?
No, so Roe v. Wade says that no state can restrict the right to an abortion consistent with the way the Supreme Court interprets this fundamental right to an abortion, which has changed a lot over the last 40 years. There's been a bunch of cases, a case called Casey, some other cases that kind of chipped away significantly at the right to an abortion. Now, if a Roe v. Wade is overturned, we can anticipate that a bunch of states in the Deep South are going to make it illegal to get an abortion, just outright. So rather than restricting it, we can anticipate they're going to live. There's likely to be states that will eliminate it altogether. So I think that would be significantly different. There's no question the blue states, we already see efforts in a bunch of blue states to, in state law, codify a right to an abortion. It's going to be liberally available in blue states throughout the country. And so it'll be for those who want to see a right to choose. They're going to have to organize. And in those communities and states where, at least currently, legislatures want to eliminate the right to abortion, they have to move or travel to where they can get an abortion. It may be the case, honestly, technology may make some of this moot to the extent the abortion pill becomes available and safe and healthy. I mean, it doesn't seem like we're fully there yet. Or they can organize and organize in numbers and run candidates for office and raise money to support candidates and knock on those doors and make it real clear. You don't support these rights, we're going to get you up out of office.
And so really you're talking about with voting rights and abortion rights, you're really talking about the same thing. The courts can't be depended on. It's going to be about grassroots movements within those states to be able to affect change, because ultimately, right, especially when you're dealing with abortion rights, it's really a lot of those grassroots movements that turned things back, right? Like it was conservative, right-wing religious organizing that was able to affect drastic changes within the Supreme Court, both doing things both locally, statewide, and then like federally. You're saying that maybe. Do you think maybe we've gotten away? Maybe the thought that we could go to courts and squeak out a 5-4 decision, did that undermine the way we organized? Did the conservative right get an advantage from the way in which they knew they had to organize?
You know, I think we've always known that we have to organize, and that even when you get a win, it's a battle in a long war. And so just as when those who support a liberal rights agenda, when Roe v. Wade was won, those who are against it, they started organizing the next day. And they've been at it for 48, 49 years at this point. And so we have to always organize. We have to always invest in a political strategy. And I would argue a frankly, nationalist strategy as well of investing in our own institutions and doing business with one another and creating our institutions in our image to serve our community, while at the same time, leveraging, if we do get organized, our political strength to demand from elected officials the type of services that we deserve. Because at the end of the day, the courts are really a lever to force government to do things it's not already doing. If we organize the right way and elect the right people, government in its first instance can actually deliver the services, so you don't have to litigate the way you used to. To be frank, I litigated for 17, 18 years. And the reason I started getting into thinking about running for office and supporting others running for office was I was like, I can be in court for 5 and 6, 7 years per case and get this piece of paper to force government to do certain things. And even when you get that paper from a judge, usually the government only does maybe 10, 15% of it. So I got to go back to court a year later to try to go get the rest of the 85%. It takes another 5 years to get another piece of paper, then maybe I get another 10%. And so it became clear to me to really get to the next level, we have to have a political strategy, an organizing strategy. We got to recruit our own candidates connected to an agenda, because we see oftentimes in politics, and this gets back to your prior question about the Supreme Court and having black faces, if it's not connected to a substantive policy agenda and we're just electing people, then we shouldn't be surprised when if they get to position that they're not acting in a way that reflects our interests, because we didn't know in the front end say, this is our agenda. These are the substantive ideas where we want to see you advance. And to the degree you're going to embrace these ideas, we'll get behind you. And so if we can come up with a substantive vision across all of these domains, from economic opportunity, education opportunity, healthcare, housing, safety, voting rights, women's rights, you name it, and organize, recruit candidates who share that vision, support them, and then hold them accountable once we win them. If we can do that, some of these other issues with the courts, frankly, aren't as material.
So that's a real interesting perspective, right? Like, and I think that when you're talking about you're like, I was like, look, man, this seems hopeless. You're like, you made a long list of things about we're gonna get a hit here, we're gonna get a hit here, duck, wait, we're gonna hit over there. Oh, that's coming down there. Now you're saying, now what you're saying is that the reason why when I'm like, is it hopeless, and you're saying not so much, is because you're saying that the strategy of litigation, the strategy of taking the government to court, taking individuals to court, that was like a last ditch strategy anyway, right? Like the key strat, like it seems what I'm hearing is that the key strategy has always been to get the legislation that you need.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And again, to be clear, there are President Obama and even President Biden did appoint some number of federal judges to the lower courts. So there are going to be some opportunities in pockets here and there. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be opportunistic in the courts. But what I am saying is, to your point, is that I believe our primary strategies ought to be political and economic. And so in the political, remember, as I said, the courts just force government to do something it can do already. So for example, you're in a state in the South and they've moved some polling places out of your community. One strategy, I'm gonna go to the federal courts and force the government to put those polling places back. Where we have an opportunity that's credible, absolutely. Let's find some pro bono lawyers, let's go get that. So it's really more of a both and you know what? Who did that? Who voted for that? What districts are they in? We got to go get them, right? Because most of these local officials are elected in very low turnout races, right? So you don't need to be a majority even in these communities. If we're actually organized and we vote according to our agenda and we recruit candidates and support them, we can simply say, oh, you voted to remove those polling places, we're going to come get you. You voted to make abortion rights untenable, we're going to come go get you, and along down the lines. And so I'm saying it's a both and strategy, but I definitely would urge us to put more of our resources and capital into the political strategy, as well as the economic investment strategy, investing in our businesses, investing in institutions that are serving our community.
And when you're talking about investing in businesses and institutions, you're really saying that it's not just about the political, it's about making sure that you have businesses that you can depend on, making sure that there's the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, making sure that we have these institutions that work within our community for what we need.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And we have allies too. I mean, you have brother from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Ryan Hager is one of the great leaders in this world, as far as I'm concerned. We got to invest in those institutions. We got to invest in Black banks. Yes, we should file litigation against mainstream banks that aren't making capital and credit available to us. Absolutely, we do that, and organize against them. If you're not going to issue credit to us on equitable terms, you ain't going to get our capital, right? We have the 30th highest GDP if you look at the output of the African American community in the world, right? So let's leverage that. Right,
Hold
so
on,
we can file a lawsuit.
Can you run back? Can you run that back?
Yeah, if you look at the economic power, basically, of Black people in the United States, we have the 30th highest GDP in the world if we're on our own country, right? So just the economic power we have, and so I'm saying use all of the strategy. Be very clear. It's not an either or. So yeah, we can go sue you bank if you're not going to make credit available to our people on an equitable basis, and let's go do that. And we can organize and say, you know what, you're doing that, we're not doing business with you as a group, as a community. And we're going to use that leverage to push other institutions not to do business with you. And even better than that, if we got Industrial Bank right on Broad Street, right? Or if you got if you got Carver in New York, we're going to put our capital there, because we ain't got to go push and sue and organize for those institutions to make credit available to us. So those are strategies. I say do it all. But I think sometimes we over-index on the litigation and the external facing strategy, and we should have that, but we don't, as far as I'm concerned, allocate as much as our energy and resources to those strategies that, frankly, are more of in our control.
And I was going to say that's fair. Oh yeah, I just switched that up. But yeah, that's fair, because I've been a member of I've been banking with Industrial since when it was City Nationals back in the 90s, right? And City National actually went under, right? Like, I don't know what the specific reasons or whatever for that is, but like so many of us should have been banking there. It should be one of the most populous right? Banks that we have then, and especially given we had the Institute for Social Justice on in the first hour, in the first half hour, and they're giving us these numbers again about Black wealth in New Jersey, and these numbers, right? Like before, it was like over $106,000 to like $179, like real expensive sneaker money. That was Black individual wealth gain, right? That was the whole wealth of Black 179, right? And so what you're saying, right? With what you're saying with, we need to put money in institutions, we need to support institutions like Black banks, we need to grow wealth, seem to go hand in hand with the numbers that are like, we don't really got like wealth like that in New Jersey. Like so how do you even explain that disparity, that not having wealth versus the amount of money that we spend? And because I think this is key to institution building.
Yeah, so that 30th in the world GDP, that is what we have holistically as a community. Now, of course, white folks have dramatically more, and obviously we know the reason why there's such a huge wealth gap in this country. And it gets to the issues the brother was talking about earlier in terms of reparations, because for 246 years, we weren't able to enjoy the capital of our labor, and not only were we not able to enjoy it, it was allocated to certain white folks. And then, of course, after that, you had another 100 years of Jim Crow segregation, where we got pennies on the dollar. In slavery, we got no returns to labor. I think a fundamental economic principle. What's the economic returns of labor? We got exactly zero for 246 years, and then 100 years of Jim Crow after that, we got pennies on the dollar. So that's why we have these huge inequities. At the same, so for me, what that means is absolutely, whether it's litigation, political organizing, the type of issues that the brother talked about earlier, we have to demand a return to the capital that is rightfully ours. So whether that's through reparation strategies, whether that's pressuring allocators of capital, whether it's investment banks, investment funds, government to allocate capital to the Black communities, we have to demand that. And so I'll be very clear about that. And litigation is a part of that. There's organizations like Color of Change. They do a great job of running social media campaigns to pressure large institutions in our country to allocate capital to Black institutions. When we elect people, right? In our state, the state of New Jersey, huge purchaser. We want some of those. We want purchasing from Black and brown businesses, and not merely catering and food and construction, where there's still huge inequities, but we get a bit more, and we want that too. We also want professional services. We want your money managers, we want your lawyers, we want your accountants. We want more of that capital coming to our community. And then obviously, as those businesses grow in terms of their wealth and equity, what do we want them to do? Hire Black and brown folks. And then they too, they're professional service providers, Black lawyers, Black accountants, Black money managers. And then if all that capital is running through Black financial institutions like banks, we can begin to multiply these dollars. So I'm saying we have a both and strategy: pressure government, pressure white institutions, pressure other externalities that have access to capital to allocate more to our communities. And then ourselves, with the capital we have, which even in the midst of these inequities on a global basis is still quite significant, we then have to invest in our own community, right? I mean, it's one thing to push white folks to invest in us the way that equity might require, but sadly, we have challenges investing in one another. And so those are challenges you would think we would be able to have more control over. So my view is we have to have a both and approach on these issues. Okay.
And so I think that this is, I started off real cynical, right? Started off being like, hey, does it really matter? Right? 6'3", like, we're screwed. Why should we care? But again, as always, you are an educator as well. And you broke some things down for us in terms of, there's some other strategies we need to use. This is part of where we've been before. We got to go bring it back pre-civil rights, but pre-civil rights, we had some strong institutions, right? That we ended up losing. Zai, do you want to jump in with another question?
We're almost out of time, but I'd be remiss to allow this discussion to go on without acknowledging the fact that there's going to be a major voting rights march, the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination on April 4th, right here in Newark. And we're trying to get 100 endorsers to participate in that march. One thing that I'm concerned about, I'm gonna go a little further than this, is that the thing that we need to be concerned about is things do not necessarily stay the same just because there's a 6-3 majority and that needle might not move, right? We have to be very careful about the needle moving the other way, right? January 6th was about a bold expression of not just folks who like Trump. That was an expression of something that we call fascism that could take us to a place where we definitely do not want to go. So we can't allow ourselves to lose any more ground in this particular historical moment, right? So all those things that Shavar talking about, yeah, we have to do that. But at the same time, we have to also fight for the sanctity of what's left of our voting rights, right? So we don't lose any more ground, right? We just have this we've got this paper thin, and it's not even a real control of the Senate anymore, because you got two knuckleheads in the chump from West Virginia,
Mansion and Cinema,
from Arizona, right? They need to be gotten rid of. And see, Democrats don't push from the left. See, they became the corporate party.
I just want to break this up a little bit.
Right? I know we had it.
Right, because we're no, but I'm saying, Zay, that's perfect for the next segment. We got it's called the vote.
It is. You're right. This segue.
Our next segment is called the vote. We got Conrad Tillerton under the back, getting ready to go for a whole hour on the vote. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. But Shavar Jeffries,
yes, sir.
First, thank you so much.
You got to ask him the question, Jonathan. You got to ask him the question.
We got to get you back on the show again. And the second thing is, well, you are answered the question often, who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? You can answer that again, or just tell us who you're rocking with now, or both.
You're rocking right now. Yeah, he's been on before. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite of all time is right behind me. I mean, you may not be able to see who that is in that.
I was trying to see who that is. Who is that?
Yeah, that's Nasir Jones. Y'all, some of y'all may not. That's Nas. Y'all know about Nas.
All right.
That's who that is behind me. That's how I've been rocking with him. Because I know there's something on Facebook the other day where somebody had some grades and they had like Keith Murray or Kool Moe Dee about this bananas. I was like, what are you talking about? So anyway, so of all time, Nas. Right now, I really like J. Cole. I think he's great. And I like content that lyrically is tight, the beats are tight, but also is something that's that's productive. I have a guilty pleasure. I will listen to the Griselda stuff. I mean, but I can't deal with the drug rap stuff no more. But when I'm at the gym and I need some banging beats to kind of give me some energy, I'll put it on. But J. Cole, I think J. Cole is nice.
Okay, cool. And Nas has been coming up with some great stuff recently that's just been amazing. And so it's like he's having this he's like, I'm an old man, and this is what happened when Black men can live. We can create some great art that will go and still be remembered even when we're older. So I love that.
Yeah, Hit Boy is kind of rejuvenate him. He did he did King Disease 1 and 2, but Hit Boy got 3 coming out. So he's kind of rejuvenated.
Okay, we got to have you on just to talk about hip hop, right? Like we got to just to have a hip hop conversation, and because we're always going for politics and legal stuff. But so glad to have you on our show.
My pleasure. All right, God bless y'all. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you. All right, so this is take care. So we are on the 7 o'clock. It's Tuesday, and if it's 7 o'clock and Tuesday, then we have the vote. And so we always have our series of activists come, and we are honored always to have our friend of the show, Reverend Conrad Tillerton, on tonight, talking about what's going on. So your man's won in New York, and he started off kind of strong. So I know you've been a big fan of the mayor of New York. You've been bigging up the mayor of New York. I just want to get you started because, I know it doesn't take much. We can get you started, but I wanted to start you on one of your favorite subjects. How's your man's been doing? Like, because I know that you supported him for a long time. He got in. He's got the power. He's running. He's fighting battles. How's he doing?
You're muted, Conrad.
You're muted. Yeah, you're muted.
He doesn't hear. He's not hearing us. You muted. There you go. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
I said first I want to make sure it's not Tuesday, because according to my calendar, it's Friday, so I just
Oh,
want to
yes.
make sure.
Yes, Friday.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Eric Adams got in. He's in, and 6 weeks, and of course he's got his hands full. The level of crime has reached a level where people who voted for him, expecting him to address that issue, are now hoping and expecting him to fulfill his campaign promise. And, that's fair. That was a cornerstone of his campaign. But of course, it's not easy. There are a lot of a confluence of social issues that he is dealing with, and it's hey, listen, it's one of the toughest gigs in the world, but he wanted it, and I think he's given time, I think he's going to do a very good job, and I am 100% behind him, and so far, I like the moves that he's made.
What stands out most, right? Because he comes out.
Well, in other words, you need a dose of realism, and see, I can agree with brothers from the community. I can disagree. We can have a conversation, but there's synergy and respect, because if I know you are committed to the community, you live in the community, you work in the community, you're in the community every day, you have a good sense of the community. Now, I may not always agree with your assessment. The problem I have is with too many people in public policy positions today, or people in the media who are influencing public policy or commenting on things in the Black community that have no real, genuine connection to the Black community, other than when they grew up 50 years ago. Okay. And so I think what Eric brings to the table, and this is important, as a young person who grew up in Queens, they're trying to come out now and bring out, he talks in his bio about the police beating him up as a boy and his brother. And now they're trying to put out why. Apparently they're alleging there was some kind of robbery or something like that. But in other words, he's lived an authentic Black experience. Reverend Herbert Daughtry, his involvement in Black United Front, the Reverend Daughtry came to about 20 young people who were active in the movement and said, we want you to be on the police force. We want you to be on the front line. And that's common in the movement. When I was in the nation, a lot of the brothers were state troopers. A lot of the brothers were corrections officers, because you want people in these spaces that are sensitive to your people and aware. So I think he brings that.
The two things I just want to
sure,
highlight and point attention to. The first thing is, so I was trying to figure out who we're throwing shade at. And so I'm just trying to get you into
a whole lot of people. It's not just one or two.
Were you throwing what you said, like they speak for Black people but haven't been in the community for 50 years? So were you trying to talk about Sharpton?
No, I would never. Okay. Listen, I've had my differences with Sharpton, but I would never say that about Sharpton, because he and I have been in the trenches too many times. He's not one of those people. I mean, when Sharpton speaks on MSNBC, Sharpton is not removed from the Black community.
Okay.
But I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about a lot of these professors, in these Ivy League colleges, and people in the media who literally have no connection whatsoever with everyday Black people. And yet, and so, yeah, I'm not, no, I don't,
So you're talking about the phenomenon of, like, there are a lot of Black people who are in
so-called
corporate America.
experts.
Absolutely.
And the corporate America or in academia,
absolutely,
the academics, like the institutions, like, well, you're Black, we can listen to what you're saying about this, and so they're writing a lot of things that just have no connection to Black people, but yet are embraced by the academy,
absolutely,
embraced by corporations,
and embraced by the media, and then ultimately embraced by politicians because they're viewed as experts. And so, these are people who, really are shaping the Black thought today, shaping what Black people hear, and therefore ultimately shaping what Black people think. And I want to say this to Brother Zaid, I have a lot of friends that are leftists, but I like leftists that have some community roots. And
if you ain't in the street, I don't want to hear a goddamn thing you got to say.
What's that? Say that
you
again.
ain't in the street, I don't want to hear a goddamn thing.
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in someone talking about socialism making $500,000 a year and $50,000 a speech. Just like I'm not interested in somebody telling me in my apartment in Brooklyn, in my small footprint, about global warming, and they got 5 homes and flying on private jets. So we have to have a common sense, and I like that about Eric. Eric he's what you see is what you get. He's not a pretentious person. He's a person who came up working class. He's lived an authentic Black life. He bettered himself, and he, has exceedingly skillful politically, and has achieved one of the highest political positions in America. And he has that sensitivity. So I think, I don't think any particular public policy issue has stood out, but I feel comfortable with him dealing with the crime issue because I know his attitude toward crime is not lock him up. Now, it's true. It may be some brothers we're going to have to lock up because you see in New York, we got this wonderful Democratic majority in the legislature, and people like Charles Barron and Andrew Stewart Cousins and, a whole bunch of folks worked very hard to literally create for Black people and brown people and working class people almost a nirvana in New York State in terms of the criminal justice system. Literally a no cash bail situation. Okay. It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, we have bemoaned for years that, people with thousands of, millions of dollars can easily get out of jail when a brother might sit on Rikers Island like Khalif Broader did for 3 years over nothing.
So in New York State,
right?
There's no longer cash bail. Cash bail does not exist.
Right. In most cases. I mean, in a whole lot of cases. I was a sister on the news the other day. Sisters, we used to call them boosters, pickpocketers. She's had 59 arrests, and she got arrested the other day, and they let her go with no cash bail. Now, listen, for a innocent brother or sister that finds themselves in the criminal justice system, that is almost nirvana. You understand what I'm saying? And unfortunately, a lot of our people are misusing that. And what happens in politics, you make progress, but if you don't handle it, and if it's not handled in the right way, then it gives traction to the people who oppose the progress you've made.
So so that woman who, the pickpocket who was arrested 49 times,
59,
59 times, she's going to go viral on Fox News about why we should bring cash bail back. Not really, so there'd be propaganda pieces, but so.
You say propaganda piece, but I mean, the bottom line is every day people are getting shot and in our community. I mean, I live in Bedford-Stuyvesant, so I'm concerned because I have children that move around this community, and so yes, I would say people use it for propaganda. Certainly, that there's no question about that. But I think that's where, and I've told Eric Adams, I've said to him that our problem is not just getting guns off the street. That's a Democratic talking point. That's a commonly held view. But people are being stabbed, people being pushed in the subway, people being robbed. And that's so we know that is part of the problem, but we also know that we've got to speak to our people and say, brothers and sisters, we can do better than this. And that's where, as a minister, that's what my concern is and my hope. And I'll lend every support I can to the mayor. And I just hope that the brothers and sisters will, see the benefit in this no cash bail situation, and not, and we curb our own behavior and so that, because ultimately the backlash is going to come. Right. They don't seem to have a majority now in the legislature, and Andrew Stewart Cousins is holding firm. But man, let me tell you, if crime continues to go the way it's going, those politicians will not be able to hold out, and there will be reform. And sometimes when you lose reforms, in this case, we're going to lose ground. Maybe it will just be giving judges discretion, but then you place yourself back in a situation where people outside of our community have to make judgment calls about our liberty. But
right. Right. Now, just to clarify, also, just when I was playfully saying in the beginning, right, like your man got in, right, like
yeah.
You two are actually friends, right? Like,
I've known when I was a young minister.
We got to get him on here. We got to get him on the show. We got to figure.
Yes, we do. He said he's coming to Newark. He said, "Let me just get my feet on the ground, and I'll be involved with Ed and some things that we've been talking about." But yes, we've been in the trenches together. I mean, that's why I'm saying this man used to report every day. When I was reporting to Mosque No. 7, he was reporting to the police force. But we'd be at the same meetings, same rallies, same press conferences. When people got shot, we'd be standing shoulder to shoulder. When the mosque was attacked in '94, he was there with us. When Abner Louima was assaulted, you name it, Amadou Diallo. He and that hardy band of Black officers from 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, were there. Yeah. And for that, the Guardians Association. So he's the real deal.
And so the reason why I bring that up is because, when I used to listen to WLIB back in the day,
absolutely.
Right, and everything you're talking about, right, like when something would go down, right, we would hear from Eric Adams.
Absolutely.
Right? So much so that I forgot he was a cop.
Absolutely.
Right? Because he was always there in terms of when dealing with police brutality, pushing for police reform, pushing for and so I'm not wrong in thinking that he was actually there in the trenches.
Oh no, absolutely. There's no question. And if you listen to it's interesting now, Pat Lynch, it came out the other day, and this is again something that we do, unforced errors, a brother I know from Harlem named Thomas Lopez Pierre, who has also been an activist, recorded Eric saying something in a gathering and sent it to the media. I mean, we shoot our own selves in the foot. And Pat Lynch, who is the leader of the police, the benevolence union, has always opposed.
Who was one of the bastion, the head of a racist bastion. Of
this is
folks who do not want any kind of police reform of any kind.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's some dirty stuff.
Wait.
Well, what did the tape say?
No. That was a black brother who put it out.
No, but
that's what I'm saying. That's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a serious problem.
Reverend Tillard,
sure.
and Baba Zaid. I just have to stop for a second because you can't write this. You said the person who's head of the Police Benevolent Association, the person who is putting out certain things and has very retrogressive behavior and opposes ways to push back against police brutality. You're saying his last name is Lynch?
Yes.
You know what?
He's been there for years.
You're absolutely. I never thought about that in all these days.
He's been there for years.
I was hearing it.
You can't make this stuff up.
I just had to be like, wait, time out.
But no, on top of that, Conrad, what's the Negro's name that gave him the tape?
Thomas Lopez Pierre.
Thomas and Lynch.
Wait,
dancing together.
Thomas? His last
you can't make this mess up.
Well, no. Let me correct that. Lynch actually, ironically, stood with the mayor and gave him a pass on what he said. And I don't want to repeat it, but I think you all may have heard it in the news. But yeah, but that's
Actually,
funny. You're right.
I'm just saying.
Tom
I don't know the brother. I don't know. I just know how you would characterize him here.
But
right?
that's dirty.
I just know
what
how
kind
you
of brother would
characterize
do
him
that?
here.
That's dirty.
Wow.
Right?
Like,
you would feed that to one of the most backward segments of the whole society. Who is that going to help?
Right.
Who is that going to help?
I'm sorry, Zed. I was cutting you off. What were you saying?
No, I'm saying that was some backwards, dirty stuff. Really low life for whoever this Thomas Pierre Negro is, because he's doing something that's not going to help anybody.
Right.
Who's he going to help? How does that help us do? What gets advanced by doing something like that, other than him having a relationship with this backwards behind right wing that's trying to take us backwards? Trying to dance with these Trumpites and all these other crazy behind people. I'm sorry, y'all, but I just can't let certain things you just can't let go.
Yeah.
I get it. It's kind of like the dude's name was Lynch. I couldn't let that go either. My bad.
That's it. That's it.
So let's just switch little lanes for a second, and just a little bit more about Eric Adams. And definitely, yeah, you got to have him on the show. But what do you think about him and education, COVID? I think that's probably the other big issue. There's crime, and then there's COVID, right? And probably in that order, crime and COVID, in terms of issues.
Right. Well, it's not clear yet what some of his educational stances would be, because quite honestly, he's sort of, not really defined yet what his educational philosophy is. There's been
I was just really pushing back on COVID and education.
Well, okay, but let me just say one thing about education. But what he has done is appointed as a chancellor David Banks, who is a really, really strong brother who had a number of schools called Eagle Academies.
Eagle Academy is good work. Yeah,
he has
we
a
got
very
one in Newark.
strong record, and so Eric appointed him as the chancellor, and so we're looking for good things to come from him. Now, COVID is interesting because as a civil servant, one of his, as a former civil servant before he went into politics, one of his greatest challenges is the fact that a lot of civil service workers have been fired because they did not want to take the vaccination. And he has been really working with the unions, trying to resolve that conflict. But he's going to have real pressure in the sense that, do you give these people their jobs back? So there is an increasing sort of resistance on the part of many people. And I want to say, that's why we have to be very sensitive. And all of these questions are really complex because it's just not white right-wingers that don't want to be vaxxed or want to have the option of being vaxxed, or who may oppose vaccinations, but a lot of our Black community groups, a lot of our brothers and sisters who are more naturalist, a lot of brothers and sisters suspicious of the government. They don't want to be forced to take the vaccination. And the question is, we don't really know a lot about the vaccination. I am vaccinated, so I want to, be honest about that. I did decide to take the vaccination, but I don't know that we should be mandating that people have to do that. Now, I know some folks that I know that don't want to take the vaccination, and these are not right-wingers. So, it's a complicated question. He's got to deal with that because, the mandates, the mask mandates have just been relaxed in New Jersey, and they're coming, and New York too. I don't know if yours started, but ours started the other day.
Jersey's in March.
What's that?
Jersey's in March.
Oh, yours is in March. Well, ours started the other day. In fact, yesterday, but they still have the mandates in the schools. So, he's got a lot before him, and fortunately, looks like he's going to catch a break on the COVID in the sense that the numbers and the indicators are moving in the right direction, and we'll just continue to pray for that. We've lost so many people, and we just pray that we don't lose too many more before the scourge is either under control or has passed through and away from us.
We had the CEO and president of Rutgers University Hospital on a few weeks ago, and one thing that he said that I thought was pretty breaking news. Then, like, he was one of the first people to say this, is that with Omicron, so many people are getting it. And I've heard some people say this afterwards. So many people are getting it,
right?
And that pretty soon that everyone in the United States will either have been infected with COVID or been vaccinated, right? So he actually used the term I haven't heard since Trump, when he was like, "It looks like we are actually approaching something like actual herd immunity."
Yeah,
because the side blessing of Omicron,
right,
is that it's so contagious,
absolutely,
and so many people have gotten it,
right,
that it might actually, and so many people have gotten it, and it's generally less severe,
absolutely,
that it has.
We got it in the context of a vaccination wave,
right?
It's a difference too,
right?
Yeah, and I'll take it all because I'm not interested in politicizing COVID. I want it to be gone. It's devastated our families, our churches. I've lost good friends and family members, and unfortunately, I haven't lost a family member yet, close family friends. So I'll be glad when COVID is gone. This is but you're absolutely right with Omicron. It's for example, I had an aunt, and one of the things that they said was that people are going into the hospitals completely asymptomatic, and they're testing positive for. My aunt broke her collarbone or fell, and she had to go to the hospital. And when she got to the hospital for the collarbone, because they're saying people are going to the hospital for other things
and testing positive.
And that's what she did. And she was completely asymptomatic, thank God, because she's 81 years old.
Lucky, that's nothing but the mercy of the Creator.
Yes, sir.
Let me go down this lane.
Sure.
And I know you at some point we want to move away from just not just talking about Brother Adams, but there are 2 points that I'm concerned with. One of them I think he's on the right track with, and one we're concerned about on the other track. And on the right track, he used one word that we have not heard on the question of violence reduction. That's important to address, and I think it's something that our communities need to unite on and really put some pressure on making that happen in a very regional way. And that is the question of interdiction. Right, there is a way to address the question of gun violence. If you want to get guns off the street, that's interdiction. Then coming back to what we got going on in Newark when the Mayor Baraka is from a public health perspective, right? You have to do that study, right? And that study, where is it coming from, and how do you stop the flow of whatever the health crisis is coming from? And if there's a trafficking problem that's illegal, it has to be dealt with. Now, one of the things that came out of Rass's study when he first did the study some years ago is that it identified a corrupt underground of corrupt police officers bringing these guns into our communities from the Virginias and the Marylands and the more gun friendly states, and bringing them in, and folks didn't want to touch that too tough, unfortunately. But that needs to be cleaned up. That needs to be addressed. Right. So I hope that when folks understand that there's a potential, there's a space of a point of unity that strategically needs to be seized. Now, where we're concerned about is considering bringing back these undercovers that have a terrible reputation in some of their behavior. That's what the community.
Let's talk about that.
Let's respond to that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because and I feel comfortable talking about this because, again, my voice for many, many years, along with many others, was a voice against the street crimes unit. The street crimes unit as it was defined under Giuliani first and Bratton, and then Bloomberg and Ray Kelly, was a very troubling phenomenon in our community. Of course,
we own
it led.
the night was their motto.
Yeah, we own the night. Giuliani time, all
I
of
was
that.
getting ready to say, I
All
heard
of
about
that. All of
Giuliani
that.
time,
Yeah.
which was
Mhm.
like
Right.
beaten, and you could use the N-word time,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
that was the mentality. Like
Right.
you know much better than I do about the level of like hatred, vitriol,
Right.
like contempt,
Right.
dehumanization that was ingrained in the way these units operated.
and-
And I don't think that's unfair. I don't think that's
No, it's not. It's not. In
to say
fact,
that.
that's why we fought against it. Over in the precinct where I lived and where my church, I'm in Flatbush now in terms of pastoring, but I live in Bedford-Stuyvesant. I used to pastor in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and the 81st precinct, the 79th, all of these precincts, the 3030 in Harlem. Yes, they were encouraged, and they held great antipathy and animosity toward the African American community. As you know, it was the street crimes unit that jumped out on our brother Amadou Diallo and shot and killed him. But there's one.
Yeah, we just had the anniversary of that just a few days ago.
Yes. But there's one critical difference, and I'm just praying for Eric. Again, if I found out today that Baba Zaid became the police commissioner, or Jonathan or Ed Riley, I would feel more comfortable. Raz Baraka is the mayor of Newark. Newark has to have police officers. I mean, y'all got to have police, and somebody's got to do it. Folks are being locked up every day, and crimes are being broken up and investigated every day, and that's just a function. You've always had police forces, and I don't care what society in Africa, Asia, wherever people want to look to as a model society, you've got to have law enforcement. So I don't have a problem with that. But one thing Eric said was great, and this is what I'm hoping will be the key difference. He said, I got to bring back these units. He said, but here's the difference. When Kelly and Bratton and Giuliani had this broken windows theory and their whole scientific approach to policing, it was based on this notion of productivity, that police officers have to be proactive and productive. So, in other words, a young officer in Fort Greene or in Bedford-Stuyvesant or South Jamaica, Queens, would have a quota of stops he had to make. Now, I used to say back then, what if I report that day and I go out in the community and by God's grace, there just ain't no crime that day? That's a good thing. I mean, you want to be able to say, I was on the ship. That's how it's supposed to be. So why would you make a man have a quota where he's got to have a certain number, 30 stops a day? And so Eric Adams said, if somebody sees a weapon or somebody with a weapon or suspects someone has a weapon, and they call the police and say, it's a guy with a blue jacket that has a weapon, he said, police are supposed to stop and frisk that person. He said, because stop and frisk is a law enforcement tool. But he said, like any other tool, a hammer is a tool. It's used to tack nails into the wall or fix something that requires something to be nailed or pull nails out. But if it's misused, then it becomes a weapon. And so I like that. I like that analogy.
But here's the thing, though, right?
Yeah.
When you have, and this is when people are talking about there's a history and culture that's built within policing, right?
Right.
And the Newark police force isn't even is not as big as the New York City police force,
Right.
right? Like Ras Baraka was able to do a lot of things with cultural policing, but a lot of that was through also hiring
Right.
lots of police
Right.
officers who are from the community, who look like the community,
Right.
and small enough to be able to top down like this ain't going to play. New York City is massive. That's an army of police officers
Right.
that they have there, with cultures that have been built up over 50, 60 years, right? You have people's aunts and uncles and grandfathers and grandsons.
Right.
I mean, you got people lineage there. How does reinstating and also you have, you know, if somebody calls, well, people call on Black people all the time,
Right.
right? Like we just be walking, chilling in the park, having a picnic, whatever. We get called on. We get, like, all three of us have been stopped and frisked at some point in our lives, probably more than once, right? And I don't even know, Zaid never told me his story. He's an activist. He probably got stopped and frisked a lot. I'd have not heard any of your stories, but I know that because we're Black, right? You've been stopped by the police. If you're Black and have a license, you've been pulled over. If you Black and walk, right? You've been stopped and frisked at some point in your life, most likely more than once or twice or three times. Why give that tool when we know that tool can't be
well
used?
I hear what you're saying. I really do. But this is something we got to face, brother. We've got an epidemic of shootings in this community, and you know, unfortunately, you know, where rubber meets the road with public policy, people charged with public policy, is that they've got to ameliorate, they got to stop, they got to mitigate people being shot. And you're right. I think Eric is going to need to spend some time with Mayor Ras Baraka and see what's going on in Newark. And, you know, this is going to be a learning curve for him. He's been a legislator. He was borough president, but he's never been a mayor. So I'm sure there are a lot of innovative police reforms. Now, he's been very active in the police reform movement as a legislator, so he's not a novice, but you can always learn more. But the fact of the matter is, you know, he's got to, you know, in other words, the voters are not going to sit forever, and let's not assume that people making these calls don't live in Harlem and Bedford-Stuyvesant and that they're not Black people. So, you know, that's
fair.
You understand what I'm saying? So it's you know, we are under, unfortunately, and that's what hurts so bad, you know. And I know there's a myriad of reasons for it, but it really hurts that in a time in New York where we have unprecedented political power, we got an attorney general that's Black, we've got a public advocate that's Black, we got a mayor that's Black, we got a police commissioner that's Black, we got a chancellor of the schools is Black. I mean, we have unprecedented Black political empowerment.
But is there?
Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, is there a danger that with so much Black representation, and it's historic, because like the stop and frisk thing is the thing that really bothered me, and that it seemed to be unnecessary as a tool to prevent crime, right? Like Barack was able to deal with lower crime in Newark, not based on increasing stop and frisk, but doing lots of violence mitigation strategies, training police not to even fire a weapon, right? Like it's almost like a badge of honor if they're able to take a gun from somebody without firing a weapon, right? Like that happened for close to a year. And when you're saying stop and frisk, that like, I just when you're saying that as a crime prevention strategy, it seemed like it was more of an inflammatory strategy, because the majority of people who are stopped and frisked, and that's why you're saying use it as a bat. But you know, I don't know how you allow the policy and it not just be about the judgment of the officers. That goes back to the same ones with different leadership. Is Giuliani time.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Let me ask you the question, though. The other part of that is that there's no evidence that stop and frisk is reduced gun violence.
Right.
That's the thing. If you can show me some data where it's reduced gun violence, then we can then we have a different kind of conversation.
Well, and listen, I think that's a fair question, and he needs to demonstrate that to the community. I think anecdotally, at least in the New York context, people believe the city was safer anecdotally. But as you said, the evidence is the other difference that Eric has pointed out.
The evidence actually ran the other way on that, right?
Okay,
like,
I mean,
the evidence ran the other because
Right.
all the evidence to stop and frisk is you'd have like an inordinate amount of stops, only a few guns that would actually be.
Yeah, well, I think, but see, that's where, but that goes back to, and I was going to say there's two other things that I think we have to remember. Number one, part of the problem with stop and frisk before was that these white officers, for the most part, would jump out in unmarked cars with no identification, no ability to for people to know who's jumping out on me, who's coming, rushing me. Eric, Mayor Adams has said that these people are going to have clearly identifiable NYPD uniforms or jackets. And the other thing is, everything you just said, Jonathan, I think is true. But when you have stop, question, and frisk, and you have an army of police officers going out in the field with a productivity or production quota, that's what made all of those stops superfluous, unnecessary. That's what made those stops, that's what made me and you and our sons and everyday people get stopped. So when you take that part away from it, when you take that part, which is a critical part, remember, when you tell police officers to go out and they got to stop a certain number of people per day, they're going to be grabbing everybody to fill that quota. So I'm hoping, now I'm not a police officer, I'm not a public policy expert in terms of law enforcement, but I trust his judgment. And I will say this to you, that based on what I've seen, if I'm a police officer that exceeds my authority, and I know that Giuliani's the mayor, I pretty much know I'm going to be backed up no matter what I do. But when I know Eric Adams is the mayor, I'm going to make sure that I am not in violation of my oath, because not only is my mayor elected by the majority of the people in this city, and we're a majority city, but my mayor also was a police officer and retired from the force, so he knows what policing is. At least that's my hope. That's my outlook.
And my pushback on that, especially with the policy of stop and frisk, is, we got a Fourth Amendment right to reasonable search and seizure, right? You have to have some evidence. You have to have some reason to have some warrant, right?
That's true.
And the whole point, it seems like stop and frisk was like the officer thinks you look suspicious, right? They stop you, they question you. Anytime you have that interaction between Black people and police, it's going to go bad. At some point, it's going to go bad, right? We know that. It's going to go bad.
I think that's going to be true for any mayor of a big city. And Mayor Baraka needs to be ready for it, and Eric Adams.
But when you give the consent to hey, stop and that's where the policy invites it. Right?
Well, let me ask you a question. You telling me if someone on my street calls the police and say they saw someone walking down the street with a gun, what are the police supposed to?
No. And they say they're walking down the street with a gun,
and that's what he said. He said if someone calls the police and says they believe someone is carrying a weapon or they've seen a weapon, he said the police are supposed to stop, question, and frisk them.
Right, but that is different. That seems to be a policy that starts with actual probable cause.
Well, that's what he said.
Has seen a gun.
That's right. That's why he used the analogy of the tool.
Right.
He said it's a tool.
Which is why if it is someone has seen a gun, has actually seen a gun,
right,
and calls, identifies that person.
That's what he said.
Gun,
right,
and then that I think that's a branding thing. They shouldn't even call that stop and frisk, because the
Right.
whole point of stop and frisk was you're doing it for gun reduction because you're trying to control a population. They're like Fourth Amendment
Right.
protections.
Right.
If someone's seen someone and they
Right.
describe someone who looks like me that they've seen with their eyes has a gun, then they've got a question. They've got to, I mean,
Well, that's what I mean. And
tough.
that's what I mean. And that's
Of course.
what I'm confident. And see, you know, I know you don't know him, but it's like you all know Raz Baraka on that side, and you work with him, you know his family, you know where his commitment and his heart is. I know Eric Adams, and I'm willing to believe and trust that a man that dedicated his whole career while he was actually working every day to fighting against police brutality, you know, I just have confidence that that person, now that he's over that department, and let's face it, back in 1989, 90, 91, when he was that he would be mayor over the whole police department. I mean, that was, if you talk about a pipe dream, that was one indeed. But yet
Right,
God has
indeed.
brought him to such a place. And you know, if somebody's got to do the job, well, I really feel like he's a man that I have great confidence in terms of being the one to do the job. But like you said, you know, we have to watch. He'll have to stay vigilant, and of course, things are not always going to go well. So, you know, he he is the mayor, so you know he has to be held accountable like everyone else who sat in that seat, because the rights of the citizens is very, very important, is sacrosanct, and even crime is not a pretext to rob people of their constitutionally given rights.
And maybe it's something that I remember you criticized many activists for using the term defund the police, because the term defund the police brought by a lot of different emotions and a lot of different people, and you had to do so much to explain that you're not talking about abolish the police. You were talking about taking certain money from certain militarization and put it and getting more social workers and violence prevention, all stuff real reasonable, right?
No good color, refund the community.
Right. Refund the community, right? Like it was all real reasonable when you actually look at the actual policies that were under defund, but the name was kind of like it brought forth a lot of things and people just had to explain it.
Right.
Maybe when he says, like bringing back stop and frisk, he might want to push.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that term has a lot of baggage.
Yeah, yes, it does. That's, you took the word right out of my mouth. Right on.
Yeah, it has a lot of baggage, and you know, I'm not in disagreement with anything either one of you have said. So, you know, I'm going to be watching, praying, working, advocating, and he knows me. You know, I will, you know, be as equally as critical and observant of him, but I also want to give the brother a chance. He's been in office 6 weeks, and he's got a maelstrom that he's inherited, and I'm praying for his great success. But I know that, you know, he needs to, you know, look at some of the things that are going on in Newark, New Jersey. But I'm gonna push back on you, Brother Jonathan, and many in our community. We got to talk to our people about our morals, about our priorities, because you can do all of this public policy stuff, but why are we killing each other? Why are we robbing each other? You know, why are we shooting each other? Why are we breaking in? Why do our young people need to go and break into Louis Vuitton stores? And I mean, we've got to have some serious conversations about the choices we're making and the values in our community. Gang killings that are taking place, rap killings that are taking place. And we've got a strong history and message of family unity and community and brotherhood and sisterhood. And so we can't forget that. We've got to be out there in these trenches, talking to some of these young people and some of these old folks that have been doing this stuff for years, and say, man, you got to stop that stuff, you know?
Let me help you in this way. Now you repping your alma mater. I want you to see what I'm repping tonight, right?
With
NAVC. Now they're going through a transition and trying to
yeah,
figure out how to get their legs back under. But 155 straight weeks of shutting down city streets in this town over question of stopping the violence, and we took it there. We talked to some of
absolutely.
everybody. We
That's what
shut
it takes.
everybody down.
That's what
We gonna have this conversation, and we're not gonna accept this anymore, right? And that's what led to that whole infusion of
right.
developing this whole ecosystem that we have now, where we have these
Absolutely.
different violence reduction, community-based strategies in place that are putting the community at the center of the whole question of public safety, as opposed to just being the police.
And there's no question. And man, I can't tell you the number of patrols I went on in the nation as when we were, in the housing projects and in the
Yeah.
community. I can't tell you, Captain Dennis Muhammad, he's still getting me out there, and he's, doing great work with the peacekeepers, Erica Ford. So, all of these
Me and Erica
initiatives,
go back a lot. My December 12th movement comrades. She was one of our
absolutely,
December 12th
all
movement
these
babies back then.
initiatives are important. And that's, but but accountability is a part of that conversation. And the one thing I developed in the nation, and I grew up in the community with a real sense of we have to be accountable for what goes on in our community. And we have agency and the ability to say to each other, hey, man, I'm not going to violate you. I'm not going to rob you. I'm not going to kill you. And we have to teach this and inculcate this in our young people, because our young people have been taken over and brainwashed by popular culture, by postmodernist thinking. And in my view, it is having a devastating effect on our families. There's a wonderful article. I'm going to bring your attention to it. A brother just penned in Newsweek magazine. Man, this is a powder keg, brother. Did you see that? Penned in Newsweek magazine. Man, this is a hello.
We got you.
Can
We hear you.
Oh,
We hear you.
Did you see that that article? It just hit yesterday. Let me tell you what the headline is. It's the Black family is worth fighting for. Okay, the Black family, and I'm not going to read any of it, but I just want to tell you what his thesis is, because it's a very powerful thesis. And it's time to fight for the Black family. It's an opinion piece, brother by the name of Delano. He's a contributor to Blaze TV. I don't know him. I don't know a lot about him, but his thesis is that the Democrats and Black leadership, and this brother's a liberal. He's a progressive. You know, let me give you one little paragraph. Non-marital birth rates have risen over time for all ethnic groups, but especially in Black communities, where over 70% of children are born to unmarried parents. These family dynamics are often attributed to the legacy of Black American chattel slavery, but the U.S. Census data shows that from 1890 to 1960, Black men and women were more likely to be married by the age 35 than their white counterparts. And he goes on to talk about how liberal politics, Democrat politics, and have essentially taken over our community. And in fact, the Democrat leaders and the progressive leaders, they live in traditional families, but now because of postmodernism, feminism, you can't even say that, our goal. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you. You can't even talk about how challenging, what the contradictions are of people raising children in single parent households, or not getting married, and not having traditional family units. You can't talk about that in Democratic politics anymore, because that offends certain constituencies in the Democratic coalition. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm telling you, you know, I think that as Black folks, we have become too democratic. We don't think anymore for ourselves. We don't have a Black ethic. We don't have Black politics. We have progressive politics. We have progressive thinking, progressive lifestyle, everything. But we've abandoned what was our core values, principles, and what have brought us thus far along the way. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around. And I'm telling you, I am not one of these people that are just going to say, if we get guns off the street, we will be in a better space. You know, that's important, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that's important too.
When you're talking about like progressive values, right? Like, is it that you're not saying about just their existence, right? But you're saying that they're within a certain context, as in there are certain things that are important, like family is important, right? Like education is important, right? Like certain things, but you also do acknowledge that like certain families can be destructive, right? Like there are lots of a lot of the things that brought forth criticisms of family were legitimate, right? Like
Well,
abuse that took place, etc. It does not mean
like what?
like certain forms of abuse that took place within family.
Well, you know what?
Forms
I
of
would say this. I would say this.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. You know, in the annals of history, there've been a lot of families, and there's been a lot of imperfection in families. I doubt that anybody here, at least I'm going to confess that I did not have a perfect family. There were traumas, and there were challenges, and all of those things. But I tell you what, I'm glad that I came up in a family rather than not have one. Because with all the imperfection, and we should never presuppose that anything is perfect. Marriages aren't perfect, but that doesn't invalidate them. And that doesn't mean organizations aren't perfect. Okay.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have them. So that's that line of questioning, or that line of thinking is kind of framing it in a way that will be able to delegitimize an institution that has proven over the years. Like, for example,
I know
let me just finish this last point.
Right.
You know, some well-educated, a PhD Black woman feminist on Princeton's campus may decide, I don't need to be married. I make money. I can raise my children. You know, the father is probably a professional, and they probably have some kind of custody arrangement, and their lives are probably well organized. But now let's go into some of the projects in New York and Newark, where some young sister or older sister is trying to struggle with raising 5 sons on her own. Okay, I want to be able to say, as a Black pastor, we need to get back to having families where these young people have men in their lives, and families, structure. Now, I'm not going to argue that families haven't been perfect, but if you're raising that to say that that's some justification to do what Black Lives Matter is talking about, destroying the traditional family, then I'm going to disagree strongly with you, brother. I'm going to push back. I'm going to drive you over into the.
I do think just
Black Lives Matter is not destroying the Black family.
I think
that's what they want to do.
Right. I think that what criticisms are talking about, and we only have.
But they need to criticize taking millions of dollars buying mansions.
Conrad.
I think that
as African
it's just way
people,
too much to get into in the last minute, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to get into some national stuff too. You took it to
I'm
a
just
totally different direction.
I'm just saying, you know, I'm tired of this academic mumbo jumbo. Because you teach in the schools, and where the rubber meets the road, this stuff doesn't work.
Well,
it doesn't work.
We should have a conversation, right? Like, because I think that we need to, when we get you back, we need to like schedule that to start off with, because I think that
Anytime.
maybe there's some things you're saying that might be taken out of context. There's some things I might disagree with, but
That's fine.
I think it's the extremes things that I don't know if they're I don't know if those are accurate representations.
Well, what's
of the other argument, right?
extreme?
Well, I mean, like
all
if
over
it's
your
Black Lives
behind,
Matter
God,
was the destruction of the family, I don't know if that's true.
Well,
I don't know
that's
if Black
what they
Lives
say.
Matter is saying families need to be destroyed.
But that's what they say. I'm just saying what they're saying.
But African people, our culture is based on the question of family, right?
Always
That's
has
something we
been.
should all
But
unite
not only
on.
However,
nuclear, but
we are-
extended.
However, we
Not
are
only
out of
nuclear,
time for
but
this section,
extended.
right? We do have our other guests coming on
Okay.
at the 8 o'clock hour.
God bless.
But
Love you, brothers.
One last thing, Conrad, we're
Sure.
gonna
Hold on,
start this. We're gonna start this next time. This time I started off with Eric Adams. Next time I'm gonna start off with this,
All
and
right.
we're gonna keep it going with that.
Anytime.
But who are you listening to right now? You are.
There's only
the
one
former
rapper I'm
hip-hop
listening
minister?
to now. Can
Who are
you
you listening to
can I link something to you?
Sure.
Will you play it?
We can't because we might
Yeah,
get shut off.
we get back in the studio, we can play.
Okay, well, let me just tell you, this is
We
the
can share the
rapper.
link though.
This is the rapper I'm listening to right now. I'm about to put it there right now for you.
Okay.
This is the baddest rapper in the country. You need to check him out and let the world know this is the baddest young rapper in the country. That's who I'm listening to right now.
All right, and give
What's
us
his
the
name?
name. Give us the name.
Yeah.
Give us the name.
His name is Amir Says Nothing.
Oh yeah, you said that
All
before.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, cool. We will definitely have him on. Oh, you put it in the private chat.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
you said
I didn't
something
mean to
like
do
that.
that.
You got
I
it,
didn't
man.
mean to do that.
That's all right. That's good.
That's all right.
I'm going to text
public
you.
one right now.
I'm going to send a song at some point later. You can play it. All right.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. All right.
God
Thank
bless,
you so
brother.
much.
Jonathan, I think your student raised this brother too.
Say that
Okay,
again.
so
Yeah, he raised that question. Yeah. Now look, now you Nkechi, you lucky Nkechi coming on, you get ready to go off.
God bless.
so
All right,
we
brother, good to see
now,
you.
you two. Now, question: you two know each other, right?
I have
You
not
met each
met
other?
the sister. No, I have
you
not.
don't know Nkechi T. You don't know Nkechi T.
I have not. How are you, my dear sister? How are you?
For years.
I'm doing good. I do believe in the Black family.
Thank you. That's all I say. That's all I say. God bless. God bless.
All right,
Don't get out of
good
your
to see
way.
you.
And
All
I'll
right, thanks
listen.
a lot, Conrad.
Take
Glad
care.
to have you on.
Thank
Can't wait
you.
to have you back. Can't wait to have you back.
All
It
right.
was fun. It was fun. All right, talk to you soon. All right, so thank you so much. Nkechi Taifa?
Taifa, yeah.
Taifa. Nkechi Taifa. So glad to have you back on our show. And honored to have you here. You've done so much and Zaid corrected me. I made the mistake of saying civil rights lawyer, and he was like, no. We are the children of Malcolm X.
We from the other side of the
Right,
track.
lawyer.
We Malcolm's kids.
A civil rights
Right.
question. It is a human rights question.
Absolutely.
And he said that you are a human.
And let's remember when we
Right.
had her here the last time, we were talking about the tribunal that we were getting ready for. She was one of the principal organizers in that. And show it up, got down. And I'm so proud of this queen. Got down, right? And we have to build on that, right? But Nkechi, now you're here. You know, I wanted to, of course, I want to welcome back, free the land, all of that. You know how we ride.
And of course, just so our audience knows who we're talking to, we're talking about a legendary human rights lawyer, right?
There you go. Now you're talking my talk.
Who has done? Yes, I corrected. I was going to say civil rights, right? Me, thinking y'all be like, yo, that Negro talking about civil rights. Like, this is not 1962, right? We've been talking about human rights since 1964. But the legendary human rights lawyer who has just an important body of work. Zaid, before we begin, can you just give her the proper introduction of who we are, who do we have here?
Well, I'll take your legendary human rights lawyer sentences, and we can run with it. But so many places. Nkechi, we had a young brother on a little while ago who could be our son or nephew and whatnot, and brand new to the whole question of reparations. You and I have been banging on the question of reparations. You in a very frontal way for longer than that young man was even born, right? And that's who we're talking to. That's the caliber of the warrior lawyer queen that we have on this show. I want us in this, appreciate where we're going, Jonathan. We got to talk about three things with her. We got where we're at now with reparations on the national scene. We had a little brother talk about the local piece we got going on in Jersey. Where we at, there's a new campaign or reviving of an important campaign to clear the name of the great Marcus Garvey that we got to talk about. And then that whole question of banning books, right? I'm glad you holding up her book, but she's got some books that have been banned, right? This is not an abstract thing, right? This is personal with some of us. She has the honor of having some of her books banned by some white supremacists. And we ain't talking in the deep south. We talk about in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
right?
we have to talk.
So we got to talk about what it means to be banned in America, in the 21st century. So there's so many places to go. But Queen, good to have you back. How are you? How you feeling? What's happening? What lane you want to go down first?
It's great. Good to see you, brothers, all the time. Great. I mean, wherever you want to rock and roll it. I mean, I'm here.
Well, let's do this.
As an English teacher and debate coach, let's start with, what did you write that was banned? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's up?
So I used to be a teacher in independent Black schools back in the late 70s, and I wrote several children's books. One is called Shining Legacy, Story Poems and Tales for the Young, so Black Heroes Forever Will Be Sung. The other one was Three Tales of Wisdom. And then The Adventures of Kojo and Amma. They've been out of print for decades, but they ended up on the banned books list of the Central York, Pennsylvania School District over the past spring and summer, along with, Ibrahim Kendi's book and a book about Adinkra symbols and all like that. Just any books that were part of resources for the school district that were by Black and people of color, that term, authors were sua sponte banned. And so because my books were banned and they were even out of print, which lets me know that they hadn't even read the books, I decided to put them back in a print. And actually they're over there on the shelf right there. Their Shining Legacy was about famous Black heroes and heroines, emphasizing leaders such as Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Toussaint Louverture, Joseph Q, Paul Robeson, sisters such as Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer, and the like, and several others, Denmark Vesey, CQ and Amistad, things that back in the late 70s and early 80s, a lot of them were not part. Oh my God, you got them up there. Oh, y'all are good. I like y'all all politics and local because y'all are on it. Yeah, so those are the books. So I put them back out for a new generation to enjoy. And because C-SPAN and other media was all over the York, Pennsylvania school district in that ban, they went and reversed their decision and unbanned our books. But the thing is, I said, how they gonna ban my books? I mean, who am I? Anyway, and so it had.
They just banned Toni Morrison's books in Will, New Jersey. Westfield's one of the most affluent old money communities in the state, right? White folks ain't got a worry in the world in that really rich white town with all that money, and they worried about Toni Morrison. It was this backwards as hell. This is America, right? York, Pennsylvania, has got a Klan history. They backwards as hell. So that doesn't surprise me with their history. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So they also banned my I wrote a book I co-authored a book in 1987 with Brother Imari Obadeli and Brother Chokwe Lumumba called Reparations. Yes. This was back in 1987 before the issue of reparations became sexy and all that. So they banned that too. And guess what? I'm bringing that back out too. It's going to be out.
That needs to be out. We need it now.
As part of the appendix of a book that's coming out soon called Reparations on Fire: How and Why It's Spreading Across America. And as an appendix to that book, I'm going to be appendixing Reparations, yes, that was banned back then. Let me just say one more thing, because y'all put up the Amazon page. Well, I really encourage people to at least go to AALBC.com. That's the African American Literature Book Club, AALBC.com, under my name, Nkechi Taifa, because I try to encourage people, particularly during this month of Black History Month, to buy Black. So if you want to buy my books, buy Black. The AALBC has a list of over 100 Black bookstores throughout the hundreds of Black bookstores across the country, but they sell my book as well. So my books, all of my books, and my memoir, Black Power, Black Lawyer. Okay, I'll be quiet.
That's important.
No, don't be quiet. We have you on.
No, I didn't bring you on here to be quiet.
No way, no. You're the one supposed to be speaking the most. That's why we haven't taken the camera off you, right?
I ain't bringing nobody on here to be quiet.
Questions out,
I need to be quiet.
You are the center.
So it's interesting because even within the brand books, I spoke about reparations, and I know you all wanted to talk about what's happening with reparations today. I talked about Marcus Garvey.
Absolutely.
I know y'all wanted to talk about what's happening with the campaign to exonerate the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So all these things I've been struggling for, all of my life in human rights, as Brother Zaid just recently said. I was the chief prosecutor, organizing and mobilizing the legal case against the United States government for human rights violations centered on the charge of genocide. And I broke all of that down before a panel of international jurists. And this was to re-emphasize the petition, the historic petition back in 1951 that W.B. Du Bois, William Patterson, Mary Church Terrell, and 90-something others went to the United Nations charging the United States with genocide. So we said back in October, we charged genocide again, as well. Yeah, there's the Black books there. Yeah.
And so this website that's here is basically a Black-owned Black book website.
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
AALBC.com. That's where you're saying this is where, don't go to Amazon to buy our books. We need to go to AALBC.com and buy our books. And you have your own page on here for that as the author and that has the things that you wrote. So anything that you wrote. So I made a mistake. My bad. I bought it from Amazon.
That's all right. But we buy your next one from AALBC.
I will buy my next ones from AALBC.
Yeah, your next one as a gift, or when my Reparations on Fire book comes out, you can get that from AALBC. And I'm a 3-time bestseller on AALBC, but I'm a bestseller on Amazon as well. But we want to buy Black.
Yes,
that's right. We got our own bestseller. That's right.
That's right. The owner of Amazon doesn't need our money.
That's for sure.
So you were saying that. So the second thing you were talking about is, about the banning, though. One last thing on it. What do you think about this trend for banning, and does it forebode something even worse? Like, I know a lot of times we talk about what the right has happened, what's going on within the country. Some of us think that it's about to be a lot more violent based on the craziness that's going on. Like, they're banning Toni Morrison. Like, these things are often precursors to types of white supremacist, white ring violence. How would you couch the book banning of which you are actually a part? Like, they banned your ideas, they banned Mouse, they banned a lot of other Toni Morrison. How do you characterize that based on your experience as a human rights lawyer?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like they started off talking about critical race theory, of which most people had never heard anything about anyway. And now they're talking about banning Black history. They are obliterating us from history, just like we were when I was growing up. We were obliterated from history, period. Then, which is the reason why I wrote the books that I wrote, because we were not portrayed in any of the books. In the Dick and Jane books, this was back in the day, it was Little White Dick and Little White Jane and Spot the dog. So I came out with the Adventures of Kojo and Alma, and their black cat Sheba, the black cat that brings good luck. So I mean, I'm just saying it's hard to say it's going to get much worse because it has been so much worse. I mean, what even can get much worse than burning down whole Black towns in districts like in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Lane, Arkansas, and Wilmington, North Carolina, Okochee, Florida, and Rosewood, and I mean all of these other countless places. These countless caskets are being opened. It's already been bad. It's already been horrible. It's already been horrific. It's already been genocidal. So, I mean, I think what is happening now, though, is that the wool is being pulled from over our eyes. And I think a lot of Black folk are waking up, okay? And waking up to say that, you know, some people don't believe that there was an end to the Civil War. You know, we saw it on January 6th. In Washington, D.C., at the Capitol, you know? And so, you know, we got to be prepared. We got to be prepared for what's coming, you know?
And so when you say prepare for what's coming, you actually do think that there are certain things that are coming that we thought were 100 years ago, but you think that this may be a precursor to straight up, right, violence.
Jonathan, absolutely. The thing is, it's not that it's coming; it's already here. We just don't see the signs. I mean, I watched on TV sometimes. I mean, you know, I'm a revolutionary and all like that, but sometimes you just got to binge because, you know, you just got to get away from them. So last year I binged on the Handmaid's Tale, and like the repression was going on right in front of their eyes. But they didn't see the signs because people were busy living their middle-class lives and this and that and that. But the signs were there and they didn't recognize it until it was too late. I see the same things happening right now. The signs are here. The police are killing us every day. They've been killing us. We see it more so now because of the technology. It's happening under our very eyes. The banning of the books. The white supremacists, they never, ever went away. They just were quiet and were silent while they were trying to determine, you know, what they were going to do. And Trump gave them the gravitas to come out from the shadows, okay? And
that'd be like come out of their holes, right?
Say it again.
I would say come out of their holes.
Right,
yeah, worm out of their holes. You got it. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So there's, I know that you also talked about Marcus Garvey, and is that related to what we were just talking about now? Like you're talking about history, you're talking about the types of repression that we don't see. Why the quest to go and exonerate Marcus Garvey, and what does that have to do with the moment you just talked about?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, Marcus Garvey should never have been convicted and unjustly incarcerated and deported in the first place. It was a total slam dunk setup by the precursor of the Federal Bureau of Investigation under a young J. Edgar Hoover to stop Garvey in his tracks and stop him. They did to stop him from building and organizing and mobilizing over 9,000 Black people. You know, we're talking about my brothers in the age where there wasn't even any social media. To mobilize over 9,000 Black people, to mobilize them, to have people have pride in themselves and the dignity to develop the colors of the red, black, and green, which would then be used in flags throughout the world to organize an international convention that had young people at the time, young Kwame Nkrumah, young Ho Chi Minh, a young Mahatma Gandhi, the parents of Malcolm X, of the Reverend Earl Little,
Little and
Elijah Muhammad,
Louise Langdon Norton Little. That's right.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Elijah was a corporal in the Detroit chapter. That's right.
Elijah Muhammad. All of these people were at Garvey's 1920 International Convention in Harlem, and they each later on went out to fashion struggles for victory in their own countries or amongst their own people. From Garvey sprang everything that we see today, and they felt that they had to stop him. And they did. But there's still the UNIA today. People are still talking about Garvey today. The booksellers and book publishers under the leadership of Paul Coates from Black Classic Press is leading the charge for the exoneration of Marcus Garvey, along with Marcus Garvey's living son, the Dr. Julius Garvey.
Let me help you a little bit here, Nkechi, because
yes,
I want to lift this up, and it goes to a point that you were making earlier about LBC, is that this current push for Garvey's release for Garvey's exoneration is being put together by Black bookstore owners. It's a network of Black bookstore owners that responded to Paul Coates. And we got to say also that Paul Coates was in the Baltimore chapter of the Black Panther Party. He's carrying on this tradition on a number of levels, you know. Yes. So that's the stream of. So there's no separation from entrepreneurship, from community organizing, right, and struggling for freedom. All that stuff's supposed to work together, right? So this is a very healthy expression of forces coming together in our community, and our people need to see that everybody can play a role in trying to take charge of the historical stage to right some wrongs that we need to address. Go ahead, jump on back.
No, you are absolutely correct. Thank you so very much. You're absolutely correct. And Garvey was the one who coined the expression "buy Black." And Garvey had organized Black corporations. He had organized the manufacture of Black doll babies, you know, so little girls can feel pride in themselves. He organized regiments, what they call the Black Cross nurses. He organized brothers who had just come back from World War I into the Black Legionnaires. You know, all these people were Garveyites. And my grandfather, my granddaddy was a Garveyite, and they always said that when they marched, he would march too. And my grandfather, he passed when I was just a little toddler, so I never really knew him. But my understanding is that he was beaten within an inch of his life because of his pride, because on his way to a Garvey meeting or whatever, he was dressed with the top hat and the little thing that they had in his cane, and the police thought he was an uppity what. And he suffered seizures all
as a consequence of that attack. Where was he? Where was
Harlem. Yeah, my granddaddy, this is on my mama's side, were island immigrants from St. Kitts back in the late 1800s. They came to this country. And then my uncle Ambrose was born in 1910. And he would go as a young boy with his father to the Garvey parades and all that. They had shares in the Black Star Line. I said, where are they? Let me see something. Nobody saved nothing like that. But, we need to tell the stories in our own families a little bit better so that information, gets passed on. I'm just piecing everything, together. I didn't realize that was the reason why he had seizures all that time, was because of the
same thing happened to Bud Powell, great jazz pianist Bud Powell. Well, the exact same thing. Uppity nigga, trying to be cute, playing concerts before white folks. They split his skull, and he never recovered from that. Right? He had a very, very similar parallel. But let's take Garvey now and transition to the whole question of reparations. We can't talk about and the perfect transition. You laid all those great freedom fighters, all that fountain from which we all spring with Garvey. Let's talk about let's honor our reparations mother, who was none other than Queen Mother Audley Moore,
who was a Garveyite.
Jump into the ocean of reparations for a minute.
Absolutely. And thank you for lifting up the name of Queen Mother Moore, because she was a Garveyite. Okay. And she passed on that spirit all throughout until her last breath. She was talking about the issue of reparations, and she helped to see that within every single movement that was going up during that time, from the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam, the Republic of New Africa, the NCOBA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Queen Mother Moore carried that spirit of reparations. And these are names that people are just now beginning to talk about, names that have been swept under the rug, that were not talked about. That's why I don't like to be called civil rights lawyer. If you're going to say civil rights, say civil/human rights, because the civil rights struggle didn't talk about these type of heroes and heroines. Okay, they were kind of like erased from history. And what I tried to do with my book, Black Power, Black Lawyer, is to bring these back. Queen Mother Moore is one of the people I dedicated my book to. Mario Bedelli, Chokwe Lumumba, Francis Welsing, Safia Bukhari, Kwame Afo, Queen Mother. These are the folk I dedicated the book to because I wanted their words to live on. And in terms of the issue of reparations, it is an issue whose time has come. There's never been more activity around the issue of reparations. I'm talking about activity in the mainstream. I'm not talking about in the grassroots because we always was active on reparations, but it is definitely a part of the mainstream. There are more co-sponsors than ever on the federal bill HR 40. There's a Senate companion bill. The state of California right now is engaged in historic hearings, okay, in a commission that is patterned off of the federal bill. State of California is looking at reparations. The state of New Jersey, I think you all probably talked about this.
We had a young brother on earlier today. Yeah, just social justice. Yeah.
Yes, a reparations bill. I'm waiting for that to happen. New York is poised. The person who introduced the very first bill in a state, most folk don't know, is the state of Massachusetts.
Late great Bill Owens.
Passed, but that was Bill Owens, state senator. Bless his soul. He just recently passed. But these are people that we need to know about, and we need to realize that reparations did not just drop from the sky with Ta-Nehisi Coates' article in the Atlantic or with Hannah Nicole Jones in the New York Times. These were great because it helped to serve to expand the issue to people who weren't listening to people like me, shall we say. There's a long history in terms of reparations. And, you know, my brothers, we just very might well see it in our lifetimes. I mean, you know, the momentum is definitely there. It's a household word right now. And I'm happy that I've been a part of that momentum.
One of the spaces that we're in, and this I want us to lift this up for a few minutes, right? And it's a new space, right? It's an exciting space. It's a groundbreaking space. It's a space we need to go, but it's a space that we also need to really get some work in, right? And it's not an easy space. We're going to have to do a lot of educational work in our communities and in those communities that we're talking to. Is that the reparations question is starting to at last get support of a multiracial kind. How do you think what do we need to do to make to shore that up and continue to move this question forward?
Well, actually, it's already happening. There are quite a number of white ally groups that are organizing white people to look into their past and to their background and pull out those caskets of the culpability of their families and their family estates and to be part of this growing movement. So it is in the process of happening right now. If HR 40 passes, it will be the first federally chartered bill to look at the issue of reparations for Black people in this country. But you know, it's happening in a climate of backlash. It's happening in a climate of January 6th. It's happening in a climate when voting laws are being struck down all over the place. It's happening in a climate of books being banned all over the place. So it's like you got, you know, this on one side, you got this on the other side. And I'm not quite sure what we're going to end up. But at least this issue is now an issue on the front burner, and it can no longer be ignored.
Yeah, I had the pleasure, or it was the burden and the pleasure, because it was really heavy, because it was the first presentation that I made on reparations to a mixed audience just last week, right? And there's an organization, a national organization. I'm not going to call the name out because they haven't officially done it yet. But they want to take up the question very seriously. They want to look at the question. They want to look at you. They want you to they want you to be a part of some of their dialogues, right? So there's somebody I want to put you in touch with, right? And it's there's some important examples to look at, right? Folks know that I have a relationship with the ACLU, but folks may not realize that the national ACLU came out for reparations, right? And this is an organization that's got, very serious visibility of a national kind, on a very respected voice in a range of legal circles, in a range of social justice circles. And those are the kinds of voices that are coming forward, recognizing that this is something that is overdue in terms of making happen, and it's the kind of thing that we should be able to talk about and figure out how to make happen.
You're absolutely correct, and I'm thrilled that the issue is mainstream, and that mainstream organizations like the ACLU and religious organizations and academic institutions and corporations, even Ben & Jerry's ice cream has challenged other corporations to be vocal on the issue of reparations. So again, its time has come. It's here. Hollywood talking about reparations. I mean, in terms of the show Watchmen and the what was that?
Yeah,
Lovecraft Country talked about it. Yeah, so it's more than those jokes that used to be in the past that the comedians would make. It's a serious thing right now, and who gonna pay reparations on my soul?
But let's, in a few minutes that we got with you, why don't you give us a breakdown on some of the important components about reparations? Because one of the things that we're going to have to do in the advancing of the discussion is educate folks on what reparations is and what reparations is not, right? Yes. And a lot of folks errantly on both sides of the question think it's just a cash bonanza for Black folks, but reparations is far more layered and involved in that. So yes. What say you to explain that to some folks? So
reparations is more than a check. I'm not saying that money ain't part of it, because it is, but it's more than a check. The harms from the enslavement era were multifaceted. Thus, the remedies must be multifaceted as well. A reparations settlement can be fashioned in as many ways as possible to address and to atone and to make amends for the multifaceted horrific harms against us that was from the enslavement era and the Jim Crow apartheid era and the convict leasing era and the denial of the GI Bill and the land trust and redlining and mass incarceration and the health disparities and the economic wealth gap, the psychological trauma. All of those are harms which must be addressed, and they are all present today as well. So it's not just a thing from centuries ago in the past. It is the living legacies of the enslavement era. And reparations should not be confused with ordinary public policy, which should be happening anyway for everyone. But reparations that's something extra. That's something special. That's something that should have happened a long time ago to atone and must happen now.
Jonathan, you're muted, Jonathan.
Yeah, I was just going to. I hear you mentioned Ta-Nehisi Coates in terms of the article that came out.
That's Paul Coates' son. He's a cover of the Black Panther Party. I got to get that in there.
Okay, and one of the things, and it's interesting because I'm a debate coach, and when that article came out, we ended up using it in some of our debates. Ended up opening up a world of like, oh, there are all these people who have argued this before. One of my Chris Randall, one of our assistant coaches at the time, just brought back all this stuff of people in past who had been bringing up like what that history was and why. Is it important? Is it as important what the reparations are, as opposed to just acknowledging that they're owed? Is it symbolic or real? Like, as in, is a victory in just an acknowledgement that they're owed, or do the specific reparations matter?
No, once that there's the acknowledgement, then there's apology, and then there's the amends. I mean, you can't just say that it's old and then not take the steps to make what is old a reality. That's where the commission comes into play. That's when the federal bill HR 40, that's when the AB 3121, I think it is, in California comes into play. That's where whatever New Jersey ends up passing, that bill comes into play, because the commission that accrues as a result of the acknowledgement will go through the who, what, when, where, and how of reparations. We'll go through the mechanics of just how that settlement, and it is a settlement because no amount of material resources can ever make up for the ma'afa, the horrible
colossal crime against humanity.
Crime
It
against
was
humanity.
both the transatlantic slave trade and the domestic slave trade.
Yeah, and I don't like to even call it a trade. It was the trauma. It was just, they put all these settling words, trade. Oh, we're gonna trade. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was ripping babies from mother's breasts. I mean, this was uprooting people from their land and taking them across a huge ocean that they could never get back across. I mean, this was the obliteration of language and culture and religion and humanity, the very peoplehood, of us. So no amount of resources will ever make up for that. So that's why it will be a settlement, and a negotiated settlement, not on the terms of the colonizer, but a settlement on the terms of us, the victimized parties.
We I know we are ending we are toward at the end of this segment. In closing, I just want to do two things. First, just give you that last word on what we need to know and what is the most important thing we should know about reparations. But also to ask you, as we ask all of our guests, and you were on here before and you answered this question before, but who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? So as you're answering that question, who, and tell us, include in that what we need to know about reparations. So those two things.
What's our next?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
what's next?
I always go back to the past. Y'all know me. I probably said the same thing before. Probably said the last poets. Okay, who was the progenitors of hip hop and laid the basis for all that. And the folk back then in that day, who else was there? Oscar Brown Jr. talking about who's going to pay reparations on my soul, or Gil Scott. I don't remember who, but I always take it back to the roots, which is what we do during Black History Month. So, I got to go there. And as for reparations, what we can do, hey, talk about it, dream about it. Okay. Determine in your mind what you think you want it to look for and make those dreams a reality.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. As it is always an honor to have you on our show. And we can't wait to have you on. Can't wait to have you on again.
Thank you for having me. Love you all.
Love you back.
Love you back. Free land.
Free the land.
So DJ Rhino, our DJ, our favorite DJ. What's up?
Peace. What's good? How y'all doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. All right.
And especially after these last segments talking about reparations, I like when she's doing The Watchmen, right? That show.
Piggybacking off of, she was talking about she didn't like calling it slave trading. It's really what it is kidnapping. That's what it is. It's not, right. It's not trading at all. It's kidnapping. Actually, real quick before we even get into the hip hop thing, just jumping on that, there was somebody had posted something. It said the clear language on slavery. Slaves equals hostages. Slave owners equal human traffickers. Slave catchers equal the police. Plantations equal death camps. Mistresses equal rape victims. Discipline equals torture and murder. Overseers equals torturers. Trading equals kidnapping. Profit equals theft. And the middle passage equals genocide.
Word.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's really what it is. You know what I'm saying? We use these other terms, but that's really what it is.
No, I mean,
especially what's crazy when you think about it, you talk about human traffickers and things like that. Like, these are terms we use now, right?
Right.
But this is what all of that was in the past, you know.
Straight kidnapping, right?
Yeah.
I think that really needs to be the language change. No, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah, indeed. So, but yeah, so going into the hip hop side of things, and you know, staying in that same vibe in a sense, right here, Public Enemy. Just yesterday was the anniversary of their debut album, Yo Bum Rush the Show on
Oh,
Def
wow.
Jam
No
Recordings.
kidding. Ah,
Yeah, yesterday, their very first album dropped. And I always love the cover because it's you see Flavor Flav, Chuck D, and the S1Ws and Terminator X, and they're all surrounding a DJ,
Yeah.
and it looks like they're
Yes.
trying to grab
Yes.
the turntable that the DJ's DJing on. So it's like they're bum rushing the DJ so they can put their music on or whatever. But I always love just the whole vibe of the cover and everything. But yeah, it was released in February of 1987.
Wow.
You know, and Chuck D always talked about how, you know, he hated that the fact that when they first released the album, you know, it was kind of late because things got pushed back at Def Jam. The album got pushed back, and Rakim and Eric B had just dropped "I Know You Got Soul," which was like I believe their second single, the second or third single, off of the Paid in Full album. And when that single dropped, that changed the game. Like Rakim, his style, that the up tempo, you know, dance vibe of that song of "I Know You Got Soul," which, you know, of course, is James Brown and Bobby Bird. But yeah, that changed the game, and so they ended up putting out this album, and they felt like the album was dated. So that's when they went back into the lab, and then they ended up doing me and you, John, our favorite song, "Rebel Without a Pause."
Right.
And that's when they went in and did that. But that was all after they had released this album. Now this album had some joints on it. I mean, it had Public Enemy #1, which is their very first hit, their very first single. You know, it was also backed with a song called "Time Bomb," which to me, in my opinion, to this day is Chuck D's funkiest rhyme flow. Like the way he was rhyming, the way he delivered the rhymes on that song was super funky to me. And I wish he kind of kept that. Because now, you know, Chuck D kind of just talks on his records now. You know what I mean? He's like doing spoken word almost. You know what I mean?
Fair. Because he uses the bass in his voice. He's like, I'm Chuck D. I have the bass voice. I could just talk. And it sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Right. Sometimes it doesn't even rhyme. You know what I mean?
Right. I just sound good. My name is.
That's the throwback to what we used to call conversational rap.
Right. But that song "Time Bomb," the way you go ooh and ah when you jump in my car, people treat me like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You know, the way he was flowing on that, man. Just his delivery on that was super, man. I always loved that, man. And you know, that was when we first got introduced to the energy of Flavor Flav. You know what I mean? Flav, you know, he was the wild boy. You know what I mean? And you know, had the song "Too Much Posse," which was Flavor Flav's solo joint on there. They had a few joints. My Uzi Weighs a Ton, that was a big hit off of that album. Raise the Roof was another hit. You know, it was a real dope album, man. You know, but I know, you know, just from hearing Chuck's, you know, several interviews by Chuck D, he always said, like, you know, he liked the album, but he wished that it had come out more sooner, so you know it wouldn't be so late and seem dated. So, but I always loved the album. Salute to Public Enemy. Salute to Professor Griff, Flav, Terminator X, the S1Ws, Chuck D, of course. Salute to all of them brothers, man. You know, that was their first album, February 1987. Yo Bum Rush the Show, Def Jam Records. So
I got to shout out my comrade I haven't seen in a while. She totally redid her whole you know lifestyle and approach after having been dissed and threatened in the public arena. But that out of that matrix came a sister her name was Lisa Williamson then, but then she reemerged out of nowhere with Sister Soldier, right?
Yes.
And she only did one album, but that one album she did was fire.
360 degrees of power.
Yeah, but Soldier may not realize it, but Soldier engaged in the relationship with Public Enemy and some of that and that generation of rappers and really challenged them to be more progressive in their content. And when it came to the money that they made with their foundations, be more community minded, right?
Right.
And then when she would later, when she started writing novels, I mean, oh man, then she
then she took off.
us out of spawn.
Well,
God.
all right, so
She
so
is
just
the
this happened just
hip-hop
this week.
novelist.
This just happened this week, right? So I have a creative writing class in addition to the debate class, and we're asking students about stories that moved them, impacted them, stuff that they read in their life, and one kid brought out No Disrespect.
Woo, that's my.
And I'm
book.
like,
Yeah.
You 17, how do you know No Disrespect? I read No Disrespect when I was like 19, 20 years old.
Yes, exactly.
And it was mine when I read it. When I read it, I was like, wow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that one wasn't a novel. That was more autobiographical.
Right. It wasn't a novel. It was a narrative, right? It was about her life. Right. It was so amazing. It's like one chapter, I just had to go to the next.
Yeah, man.
And then one chapter was so wild, I just had to put it down and be like, wow, I gotta sit with this. Yeah. This is some amazing writing, right? Yeah. Oh man, that brought back great memories of Lisa Williamson's Sister Soldier, and probably one of the most powerful collection of narrative essays from a young person
for that generation.
Yeah. Man. I had a crush on her, man, back in the day, man. Because when I first saw her, there was a show on BET that used to be called Teen Spirit, and it was a show for young kids to talk about current events. And I remember they had her on the show one time, and it blew my mind the way she was speaking, what she was saying, and just her. I mean, she was just unapologetic, man. You know what I'm saying? With everything that she was saying. And this is when she was still Lisa Williamson. She wasn't even Sister Soldier yet.
Right.
And I was like, wow, man. And then I followed her ever since then. And I had the honor of actually
lost him.
Did
we lose Rhino?
I interviewed her.
Bubba, he's here. He's speaking. He's doing his thing.
I thought it was my band. We lost him.
No. We lost you. Maybe you're not hearing what's going on. Yeah, pretty good. Like Rhino was right in mid. Rhino was doing his thing. He was talking about his crush on Lisa Williamson, and I was all into it.
Nah, but I was saying that during that time, like right after she had dropped that album, 360 Degrees of Power, I had the honor of interviewing her in Brooklyn at Boys and Girls High School, and man, I mean, she was straight up. And what's funny though, the way that interview even happened, I probably told the story before, but there was a guy, there was a Caucasian guy named Gary that was doing video work for a public access station out in Japan, and so he was out here doing a bunch of different things. He taped me and my crew in the neighborhood doing music and the stuff that we do, and everything. It was really pertaining to us, everything that we were involved in. And at that time, it was like 1992. We were involved in the movements. We were doing a lot of different things. He mentioned, because he knew that I had a thing for Sister Soldier, so he mentioned that he had an interview that he had to do, and he went there. He brought me, and luckily, what happened? She didn't want nobody white doing the interview with her, so I ended up doing the interview.
All right,
and that's how that joint happened. So,
wow.
But yeah, so that was a
great story.
That was back in 92.
That is a great story.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened, right, is you went in there. The white dude was like, "I'm gonna do an interview," and Lisa Williamson was like, "Nah, you got to go, Rhino. Yeah. You're the one to do the interview.
You got to bring me a brother."
All right, that's excellent.
That's what she was saying. Yeah, you got to bring
and predictable and consistent, right? Consistent with whatever she was saying before. Also, she was known for being taken out of context by the media anyway, and
ever since Bill Clinton,
right?
Yeah.
Right, where she didn't get the support that
he basically came at her and at a national black organization's convention, and nobody stood up for her,
including Jesse Jackson.
Nobody stood up for her.
You have to point out that was actually Jesse Jackson's organization. That was his thing, right? Mm-hmm. Jesse Jackson was in the room. They were there, right? Am I incorrect, Zay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was and Bill was just like, it took to his head that everyone was saying he was black, and he was like, well, I can make my bones with white people by attacking this black woman publicly, and I'm not going to get any fallback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bill Clinton is see, there's crack on the streets, then there's the political crack of Bill Clinton and the right wing of the Democratic Party. That's another discussion that we got to have sometime. The limiting impact of Bill Clinton on the Black community's politics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
real quick,
Rhino, you were talking about
going back to Public Enemy and whatnot. Because I'll take it somewhere else.
Yeah, now I just wanted to say salute to them for the anniversary of their debut album, Your Bum Rush the Show. Real quick,
I reached out to Chuck too. I didn't hear back from him. I had been on.
Yeah, we got to get him on the show.
I would love to have Chuck come on.
Yeah, man, me too, man. That's like y'all don't even know, man. I'll probably.
Well, he's been on the show before. You know, Chuck.
I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't. I don't think I was part of the show
that
when
makes
y'all had
sense.
it before. Yeah,
he's
but I also want to say,
several shows of his own too.
Yeah. All right, but you were saying, Rhino?
Yeah, I want to give salute to Jay Dilla. We lost Jay Dilla 16 years ago yesterday.
It's been 16 years.
Yeah. What was it? Lupus, I believe we lost him to, man. Yeah, we lost Jay Dilla 16 years ago. That's crazy. 16 years ago already. Yesterday. So prayers to the family. Salute to that brother's spirit, man. He's definitely alive in the spirit of hip hop and in music, man. Everybody still talks.
Wow, it didn't seem like that was 16 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. But everybody still talks about Dilla, man. So salute to that brother's spirit, man. Also, today is D'Angelo's born day, and I'm bringing D'Angelo up because yes, he is hip hop. He is hip hop. Erykah Badu is hip hop, and today is the anniversary of her first album, Baduism, which came out back in '97. So happy anniversary to Erykah Badu. She's doing all kinds of things. She still has her incense and everything else that she's doing, So she's still on the ball. And when she does do those, like when she was doing those quarantine concerts, it was crazy. I mean, she would have the drum machine out there, and she'd be doing stuff live right along with her band. And that's why I say Erykah is definitely hip hop, and that's why I bring her up. Real quick, I don't know if y'all saw the memes of Fat Joe when he had those Yeezy boots on, but it's been crazy because there's this picture of Fat Joe with these Yeezy boots. They're mad ugly in my opinion, but everybody was clowning them. There was so many memes of Fat Joe with his boot on. People were saying yesterday's boot is not today's boot and all of this stuff, using his boot. But what's funny about it though is that, and the good thing about it though is that, Fat Joe, he took it lightly, man. He made light of it all. He would repost the memes and stuff and just laugh at it. That's
the only way to deal with it.
Right.
Know the boots are ugly.
And what's so dope about it is that since that, he started putting out these other shots of him, with some real fly boots. I mean, but now like everybody's checking for Joe's boot game ever since that Yeezy situation. But now he's taking pictures in some heavy hard hitter boots, man. Joints that I'm wondering like, yo, how much are those? Like, what are those? You know what I mean? Like he's got some joints, man. So, but it's funny that it's like it's created this attention now on his footwear to see like what he's rocking, and now he's rocking like super dope joints. But it all started from him wearing those ugly Yeezys and everybody making fun of him. You know what I mean? So I just put light on that.
Hey, question. I got a question for you. I got a question for you on that. Serious question.
What's up?
Are Yeezys really? They really ugly, right? Like, yes. Is it just me?
I don't like them, bro. I don't like the boots. I don't like the sneakers. I mean, I think I may have seen one style of sneaker that he had that was like workable. Like you could probably mess with that. I could probably mess with those, but like for the most part, like I'm not really digging the style of any of the Yeezy footwear at all.
Now, why
that's
do you?
My opinion. That's my personal.
But why do you? Because he's a $1 billion company, right? Like he's.
I mean, I guess he's trying to be different. I mean, you ever seen some of those European styles of fashion? That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the European styles of fashion you'll see in France or wherever, where they look like they're just wearing. You ever seen that movie? What's that? The Sleeper with Woody Allen. Where
you said Woody Allen. Wow.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's like they're wearing stuff like that as fashion out there. You know what I'm saying? And it just seems like he's kind of like tracing behind that. So that's the fashion world. I'm not even really in that world, so I'm not going to speak too hard on it. Okay. Everybody got their preferences, man. But I'm not digging the Yeezys.
So and one last question on the Yeezys.
Mm-hmm.
is it hip hop fashion? Like,
not for me, not to me. I mean,
because
some people,
it might not be your thing, but
you gotta think.
hip hop?
You got Kanye. It's Kanye West, right? And Kanye West has a huge following, and he came in through the hip hop culture, through the rap culture, the rap game. And so there's gonna be people that are gonna look at that as hip hop fashion because it's Kanye West. He's a hip hop artist, he's a rap artist, so they're gonna look at it like that. Me personally, no, it's not hip hop fashion. I don't know how that even fits into the fashion of hip hop culture, how we get down, but hey, but one thing I will say, hip hop has always been about being different and being original. And if that's the case, then there you go. You got the Yeezys, But before we run out of time, I definitely want to hit on this, John. Did you hear that Snoop Dogg now owns Death Row Records?
I heard.
That's crazy.
I did hear.
I
did hear. Now, the only thing I was wondering, right, is he must be traumatized from the experience, right?
Everybody, all of them.
I mean, they must all be in therapy from the Death Row experience. Is he going to change the name? Like, is he going to change it from? Because maybe that might have been part of the problem, right? It was Death Row. Like, how peaceful could it be?
Mm-hmm.
Like how much
was the case they gave me?
Dr. Dre had to leave. Like Tupac died, right? Mm-hmm. Like Snoop was left. He was like, I gotta go. And eventually, Suge finally went to jail for murder after all these murders that might have been had based on Suge Knight. He had to wait till they made a movie about it to go to jail for murder. I'm like, the movie was already being made. You got away with all them probable murders, right? Like, there are probably a lot of bodies that Suge Knight just got away with, is swept under, right? And then they made a fictional movie about it, and Suge Knight got to kill 2 people. I don't.
My thing, what I want to know is, did he get the rights to the masters, like of all of the artists that were on Death Row? That I want to know. If he has control of the music, then that's a great thing because Snoop knows music. He knows how to swing things the right way when it comes down to music and marketing and stuff like that. He's got a head for that. So if he has the masters to Death Row, that'll be dope. Otherwise, if it's just he owns the label, that's cool. But now he's got to build it. He's got to rebuild that whole thing again. And then that's where the question comes in that you asked: are you going to keep the name?
Right. Because here's the thing, right? Let's say he owns all the music and all the masters.
Mm-hmm.
I know Suge's in jail, but would you trust it? Like, I mean, when he was out of jail, he'd be like shaking people over the edge and be like, sign, Mary J. Blige is mine. I don't know how true those stories are, but they have weight, right? Like, I never listen to rumors, but with Suge, it's got credibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, if I'm
I don't know. I feel like maybe Snoop was like, look, man, he in jail. He ain't got no power right now. Everybody else is gone. I got the money. I could turn this whole thing around because I don't know if you know about the story about, when Eminem made some crack about Michael Jackson and Michael Jackson went out there and got all Eminem's publishing or something like that. Yeah. So Mike doesn't play. Like Mike was out there like doing stuff like that. Like you can crack on me all you want. I'll buy your whole catalog and have that under my control. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of how I saw this move in a way. It kind of felt like that. It's like, yo, with all the hell that Snoop caught at Death Row, with all the stuff that he had to go through and all the things that he witnessed, he can turn around and buy it, and now it's his, and he can turn the whole thing around. You know what I'm saying? So I just saw it as a super boss power move. Salute to Snoop Dogg, and I, like I said, I hope he does have some kind of hold on the masters and stuff of the music that was.
Yeah, that's the key piece.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But yeah, that was a good move when I heard it.
I would say 2 things. 1, does he have rights to the masters? And 2, and maybe it's just being scared of the boogeyman, but I wouldn't really not want to ever own anything that Suge Knight owned. Because I'll never know when I come home and somebody be like, Suge wants the money in jail. And I'd be like, but he's in jail. And they'd be like, that don't make no difference. Want to get out here on this balcony? I mean, I wish Snoop well. I'm very happy for Snoop. But when I heard he bought the rights to Death Row, I'm like, I wouldn't. Because he renounced violence. He gets high on weed. He owns owns his weed companies, and like now Death Row. I don't know,
man. I don't know.
Right, like you got other things to get to?
I saw it as a chess move.
It's a civilizing move within hip hop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I saw it. So real quick, that's all I got. But I just want to say, of course, check me out tomorrow, 3 p.m. for the Shake Up, CMZ at 3, twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ. I'm going in. I kind of got a new format of how I'm doing things now for Saturdays. Also, for Valentine's Day, Monday, I'm supposed to be on Twitch. Same address, twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ. But I'm coming on at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I was trying to get a later one in the evening, but me and my DJ crew it's a whole lineup of us, so we're all we're all sharing the time. So I'm coming. Nice. Yeah, so I'm coming on at 1 p.m. tomorrow in the afternoon. So check me out, 1 p.m. twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ for the special Valentine's Day mix.
All right, man.
That's Monday.
All right, so what do we need to know for next week? Because we are past time. So Zaid, close us out. What do we need? What do we need to know?
No, April 4th is a big day in this community. The Million Voter March, right? 5 o'clock, Lincoln Center.
Wait.
Yeah, April 4th, the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King.
Okay, I'm just saying what's coming up this week, right? Like, or is there, because it's February 11th, so.
This week, we have to do a talk on Malcolm. On the 17th, there's Bill Sales, Kelly Harris, Todd Barrows, and myself. We're doing that for the People's Organization for Progress on Thursday at 7 o'clock on their Facebook page.
Nice. All right. Well, if that's it, we get ready to sign off. This has been a really good week on All Politics Local. We had an exciting show. Thanks to the Institute for Social Justice and Jean-Pierre Brutas for breaking down the New Jersey initiative on studying reparations, very similar to the congressional bill, and pushing that further, that conversation forward. Thanks, Shavar Jeffries, for coming out and breaking down the Supreme Court and giving us reason to have a little bit of hope, right? Like I came in real cynical, but I always enjoy the conversations with them. Always learn a lot. And thanks for Reverend Tillard coming on at 7 with the vote. And we had some good, lively conversations about what's going on in New York, among other things. So thank you, Reverend Tillard, for coming back every month. And of course, thank you to Nkechi Taifa, the extraordinary human rights lawyer, coming on and talking to us about the larger historical perspective with reparations that she's been working on for years and years. And of course, we enjoyed Baba Zaid and DJ Rhino coming in and doing your things. So thank you another week, and be careful, be safe. Happy Valentine's Day. 2020 was horrible. 2021 we thought was going to be better, but in 2022, make lots of babies, populate the planet.
Man, I'm going fast on Valentine's Day. It was hard for me last year. Oh my God. Long story, real private. I ain't gonna go.
Well, I'm just saying, you just put it all out there. I was just trying to get, hoping people were gonna have some fun and make babies. But maybe
Black love comes hard.
Have fun. Black love over the weekend. Make lots of babies. Lots of them.
Black love matters.
Love matters, right? Black love matters. I didn't say make babies with no love, right? Make some love.
That's right.
All right. Good night.
Be careful.